Chapter 168. Along the way, Lin Yuan corrected the way when you addressed him. It would be too strange if when you still called him young lord outside. Lin Yuan wasn't the only one who found it strange. If passers-by heard it, they probably wouldn't take it seriously and would only think that they had encountered a chunibu. He looked at him in disdain and silently cursed him as a lunatic. Soon the sunlight egret arrived at the rendezvous point. They got off the sunlight egret, and when you used her spiritual energy to put it away, Lin Yuan immediately saw Wuxia, who was standing not far away, and a middle-aged man with a crew cut was standing next to him. This middle-aged man had a flat face and a crew cut. When Lin Yuan looked over, he nearly blurted out, "Brother crew cut." Lin Yuan couldn't help but recall a joke from his previous life. Whether the desert was chaotic or not, Flat Top had the final say. When Wuxia saw Lin Yuan, he immediately greeted him with a smile. "Young Master Lin Yuan, long time no see." Lin Yuan looked at Wuxia and felt that he was much more spirited than he had been 2 months ago. Previously, Wuxia had an air of decadence about him. But now that air of decadence had been swept away, making Wuxia look a lot younger. When Wuxia saw Wenyu, he also nodded in greeting. Wenyu quickly returned the greeting. When she saw the Class 2 Creation Master's retainer crest hanging on Wuxia's chest, she knew that he was Lin Yuan's retainer knight. He was Lin Yuan's assistant in name, but in the end, their relationship was not as close as a retainer knight. Previously, she had discovered that Lin Yuan did not have a Creation Master crest on his chest. This discovery made her understand that Lin Yuan was a very low-key person. Lin Yuan smiled and extended his hand toward Wuxia. As Wuxia looked at Lin Yuan's outstretched hand, his eyes flashed with excitement, surprise and peace of mind. Wuxia waved his hand and held Lin Yuan's hand tightly. Wuxia immediately understood what Lin Yuan meant when he stretched out his hand. When Lin Yuan had said that he could heal the insect queen, he had shaken his hand to make the promise. Now that Lin Yuan had extended his hand again, it meant that the insect queen had recovered. Wuxia hurriedly restrained his ecstasy and introduced the man with the crew cut standing at the side to Lin Yuan. "Lin Yuan, this is the owner of this land." Brother Flat Top looked at Lin Yuan and went straight to the point. "Let's go in first. See if you're satisfied with this piece of land. If you decide to take it, we'll discuss the price." Brother Flathead spoke very sincerely. It was obvious that he was in a hurry to sell this piece of land. Wuxia had already shown Lin Yuan the information on this land. Based on the information alone, Lin Yuan liked this land very much. Lin Yuan, Wuxia and Wenyu followed Bro Flat Top into the somewhat dilapidated door. After entering the door, Bro Flat Top hurriedly said, "This place used to be a holiday villa before the Spirit Chi awakening. However, after more than 100 years, most of the facilities inside are old and many things have been moved away." Brother Flat Top was a little embarrassed when he said that. Logically speaking, he should have arranged for these things to be dismantled in advance. However, it would cost a lot of money to dismantle so many old facilities. Dismantling these facilities was actually not difficult. What was difficult was actually to excavate the foundations of these facilities after dismantling the facilities. This was the big project. At this moment, when you suddenly spoke. "If you come in, regardless of whether you live here or not, everything inside will be dismantled and rebuilt." When you said this, she looked at Brother Flat Top, causing Brother Flat Top to smile awkwardly. Lin Yuan looked at the scene in front of him, although the old facilities were very eyesore. Although the old facilities in front of him were an eyesore, if he bought this land, he did not intend to keep these old facilities. Since everything had to be rebuilt, he did not care much about these old facilities. The key was the environment. The area of this land was huge and there was a small artificial lake next to it. Could even be said that this land could be used to build a manor. Upon seeing that Lin Yuan did not speak and continued to look at the scenery inside, Brother Flat Top could not sit still and said, "This land is qualified to build a guild club. This piece of land has the qualifications to build a guild club. The area of this piece of land is more than twice the area occupied by those A-grade guild clubs." Someone had previously considered buying this land to build a guild club. However, at this point the Flat Top Bro couldn't continue. After the person who had previously considered buying this land to build a guild club looked at this land again, he gave up after thinking about it. The reason was that this land was too big and the guild club could not afford to develop it. However, Brother Flat Top did not want to sell this land separately no matter what. This was because this land could only be said to have a large area and good scenery. Once it was dismantled, it could no longer be sold at a price. In fact, Brother Flat Top also knew that buying this land was equivalent to buying an empty space with nothing. Just the price of this land was not cheap. If he wanted to develop this land again, he did not know how much money it would cost. Lu Jie followed beside Lin Yuan and said, Lin Yuan, in terms of area, this land is definitely the first choice. Lin Yuan, in terms of land area, this piece of land is definitely the first choice and the environment is very good. However, if you want to build on this land, it won't be a small sum. Lin Yuan nodded. If this land was to be rebuilt, it would indeed cost a lot. However, Lin Yuan was not short of money now, so there was no problem if he wanted to build on this land. Moreover, Lin Yuan had the idea of forming a guild club, but he had not made up his mind yet. If he bought this land now, even if he wanted to form a guild club in the future, the place would be enough no matter what. At the same time, Lin Yuan's contracted phase were Genius, Chimey, Red Thorn, Blackie, and the Blue Flash Purple Butterfly. Lin Yuan placed them in the Spirit Lock spatial zone most of the time. However, Blackie, the Blue Flash Purple Butterfly, and Genius were already stuck in Lin Yuan's level. Therefore, there was no longer any improvement in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Therefore, he might as well release them and let them feel the blue sky and white clouds under this boundless world. Lin Yuan would nurture many more Fays in the future, and he might keep some of the extremely outstanding Fays for himself. Lin Yuan could not always keep these Fays in the Diamond Fay storage box. With such a large piece of land, the Fays that Lin Yuan nurtured would also have a place to reside. For example, the Radiant Moon Palace on the Leaning Moon Mountain had some rare Fays playing around everywhere. This could be called a paradise on Earth. When Brother Flat Top saw that Lin Yuan still did not say anything, he felt even more uncertain. Brother Flat Top was really anxious to sell this piece of land. This was because he now needed money to nurture his son so that he would not be left behind by his peers because of resources. He was the beloved son of his parents. He must have a far-reaching plan. Baidu read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 169. If a combat class spirit chi professional wanted to grow, they would need a lot of resources. If they could not keep up with the resources, they would waste their talent and affect their growth. There were also some geniuses in this world who had slow progress because they did not have enough resources. For example, even if Chu Ci was talented enough, she might not even have the chance to go to school without Lin Yuan. The flat-top man's aptitude was relatively ordinary, but his ancestors were from a wealthy family. However, they were now in dire straits. Although the glory of the past had declined, there was still such a large piece of land left. After being in society for a long time, the flat-top man naturally understood the principle of strength being respected. His son had been talented since he was young. He was now studying at the royal capital's Spirit Chi Vocational University and was also a member of the Key class. Not long ago, his son had been fancied by a B-class guild club, so he planned to sell the land left by his ancestors and fully nurture his son. As long as his son became a powerful combat class Spirit Chi professional, it was possible to recreate his family's former glory. Wenyu had been watching the flat-top man's nervous and hesitant expression. In fact, given her understanding of Lin Yuan, she knew that Lin Yuan had really taken a fancy to this land after looking at it for such a long time. Otherwise, given Lin Yuan's character, if he did not like this land, he would have long gone to look elsewhere. Therefore, when Yu walked in front of the flat-top man and said calmly, "This land of yours is not easy to sell. This land of yours is not easy to sell." When the flat-top man saw that Lin Yuan had not spoken, he was not confident. Now that he heard Wenyu speak, the smile on his face froze. Wenyu had been carefully observing the flat-top man's expression. Now that his expression had changed so obviously, the corners of Wenyu's mouth revealed a smile. Wenyu's smile was very gentle, but it was not the case in the flat-top man's eyes. The flat-top man only felt that Wenyu's smile was 30% cold, 30% mocking, and 40% indifference. This 30% coldness, 30% mocking, and 40% indifference added up to one meaning: she did not want to buy the land. The flat-top man looked at Wenyu with some anger and almost blurted out, "You bad woman." Wenyu did not know that the flat-top man's heart had started to play a movie. Wenyu cleared her throat and said, "You know the reasons why this piece of land isn't easy to buy. Firstly, the land is too big and very few people would buy such a large piece of land to develop. Secondly, this piece of land isn't considered close to the royal capital. Even if you ride on a silver avian fay, You will need at least half an hour to reach the royal capital. Thirdly, it will cost a lot of money to dismantle so many old facilities here. As when you spoke, Brother Flattop's expression turned uglier with every sentence she said. At this moment, Brother Flattop was just short of transforming into a groundhog and yelling at the empty space, "Ah!" After taking a closer look, Lin Yuan discussed with Lu Jia and decided to buy this piece of land. Lin Yuan had his eyes on two pieces of land previously. Although they could both be used to build shops, the piece of land in the royal capital's bustling section was truly too small compared to this piece of land. The piece of land in the bustling section of the capital couldn't even compare to 1% of this piece of land. In fact, this was reasonable. It was unrealistic to want to buy such a large piece of land in the capital's bustling area. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Lin Yuan still felt that this piece of land was more suitable for him. Just as he was about to negotiate the price with Brother Flattop, he saw her standing there with an aggrieved expression. When Yu calmly said to Brother Flattop indifferently, "The price you just mentioned is still unreasonable. If you still sell it at this price, I don't know how long you'll have to sell it." Brother Flattop gritted her teeth and said, "The price you just mentioned is still unreasonable. 8 million radiance dollars. Upon hearing that, Wen Yu shook her head calmly. "Not only do we have to dismantle these old facilities, but we also have to fill in the ground and compact it. Look at how many old facilities you have. If you have 8 million radiance dollars, you have to help us dismantle these old facilities." In the end, Brother Flattop was about to cry, gritted her teeth and spat out blood. 7,500,000 radiance dollars. I won't sell it for any less. Lin Yuan was a little dumbfounded. He did not expect Wen Yu to have this talent in bargaining. Wen Yu spoke in a gentle and soft voice, but Brother Flattop was almost in tears from the bargaining. This bargaining was simply too powerful. Lin Yuan could not help but want to complete the joke he had seen in his previous life. Flattop with white hair and a silver cloak. I'm the fiercest in the desert continent. I'm invincible in the world. I just don't dare to go to the East continent. Lin Yuan and Lu Jia had already discussed this piece of land. It was just right to buy it for 12 million radiance dollars. If it was more than 12 million radiance dollars, it would be a loss. Previously, Brother Flattop had given Lu Jia 10 million radiance dollars, which was already a profit according to the market. However, after chatting with Brother Flattop for a while, Wen Yu actually lowered the price to 2,500,000 radiance dollars. According to the price that Wen Yu had negotiated, buying this piece of land would definitely be a profit. In fact, although Brother Flattop had lowered the price, she was not stupid. Brother Flattop had been unwilling to lower the price, so she had not been able to sell it for 2 years. However, her son had grown up and urgently needed radiance dollars to nurture phase. In order not to delay her son's talent, she could only helplessly sell this piece of land at a lower price. Otherwise, according to the Radiance Federation's news, this piece of land would not be able to be sold when the dimensional rift became active in a few months. In the end, Lin Yuan and the bro Flattop sold the land for 7.5 million radiance dollars. Wen Yu suddenly whispered to Lin Yuan, "Actually, if we say that we won't buy it this time to scare him, I can still bargain for at least 100,000 radiance dollars." Lin Yuan felt that she was simply too strong. Although Wen Yu's contracted Fei did not possess combat ability, she was a goddamn genius in the internal affairs department. In the afternoon, Lin Yuan took Exin Ing, Lu Jia and bro Flattop to go through the corresponding procedures. From then on, the owner of this land was officially Lin Yuan. Then, under Lin Yuan and Lu Jia's somewhat distrustful gazes, Wen Yu took on the task of rebuilding the mansion. It was obvious that this piece of land needed to be remodeled before it could be livable. At that moment, Lin Yuan brought Lu Jia to the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association to rent a breeding room. He planned to evolve Chimey into a fantasy breed in the breeding room and hatch the acid corrosion queen bee to enhance it. Lin Yuan and Lu Jia entered the breeding room. With a flip of his hand, Lin Yuan took out Lu Jia's legend insect queen. The moment Lin Yuan took out the insect queen, Lu Jia's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Baidu was the first to read the latest chapter of the Beast Evolution Merchant Claw book house for free. Chapter 170. When Lin Yuan took the insect queen out of the spirit lock spatial zone, Lu Jia immediately sensed it. Upon seeing the insect queen that he had not seen for a long time, Lu Jie instinctively felt the insect queen's attachment to him, as well as its longing and joy. If it weren't for the hardships of the past 2 years that caused him to fall from the sky to the bottom of the valley, turning him from a proud son of heaven to an ordinary person, he wouldn't have realized that sometimes, not forgetting one's original intentions was the only answer. These 2 years of settlement had allowed Lu Jie to shine in the limelight and also to live in the lowly. His mind had long since become strong. If his mind had not been as hard as iron, Lu Jie's tears would have instantly rolled down from his eyes when he felt the insect queen's intimate spiritual waves. Lu Jie could not forget how he had felt the insect queen's injuries worsening, and its spiritual energy weakening until it was on the verge of death. Although Lu Jie knew that Lin Yuan had healed the insect queen the moment he shook hands with him, he still couldn't believe it. However, when he saw the insect queen in perfect condition and communicating with him with spiritual energy, Lu Jie could not help but have mixed feelings. Lu Jie could not help but feel all sorts of emotions. Before he could savor the joy of this reunion, he was shocked to find that the insect queen's quality had actually increased from epic to legend. Lu Jie trembled with excitement and looked up at Lin Yuan. He wanted to say something but his throat could not even make a sound. No one knew better than Lu Jie how difficult it was to improve the source-type insect queen's quality. The insect queen's quality improvement required extremely pure spirit qi, which was several times purer than the spirit qi needed to restore the insect queen's damaged roots. However, even the Class 5 Creation Master Bamboo Monarch could not restore the insect queen's damaged roots' spirit qi purity. Lin Yuan was probably the only one in the world who could do it. Therefore, only Lin Yuan could improve the insect queen's quality from epic to legend. When Lin Yuan saw that Lu Jie was so excited that he could not speak, he could not help but smile brightly. He reached out and patted Lin Yuan's shoulder. After this, you and the insect queen should be reborn. The Radiance Hundreds people have been looking forward to the return of the Radiance Hundreds sequence number 39, the Heart of Insect Swarm. What Lin Yuan said was a sore spot that Lu Jie had never dared to touch before. This was because every time he saw on Star Web how the Radiance Federation's people called the Radiance Hundred sequence number 39 Heart of the Insect Swarm a hero and how they looked forward to his return, he would always be shocked. Lu Jie, whose hopes had been dashed back then, only felt powerlessness and pain. Lu Jie wished he could return to the past, controlling the swarm of insects to dominate the competition. But all of this longing was like a mottled shadow in an illusory dream. Lu Jie had never regretted resisting the invasion of dimensional creatures outside Frost City. At the same time, Lu Jie comprehended a willpower rune while commanding the source-type life form, the Insect Queen, to fight against the dimensional life forms while feeling the fervor of the insect swarm. However, the Insect Queen's origin had been damaged to the point where it was on the brink of death. This made Lu Jie feel that comprehending this willpower rune was extremely ironic. But now everything seemed to be the best choice in time. He knew that as long as he fused the willpower rune with the Insect Queen, it would evolve into a fantasy breed. He would also truly be reborn and announced to the world. Me. Lu Jie. The Radiance 100 sequence number 39 Heart of Insect Swarm is back. Lu Jie knew that everything he had and all the glory he would have in the future was given to him by this young man. It was this youth who had ignited the light of hope, and now, with a wave of his hand, he had changed the light into a sun. Lu Jie's gloomy heart was coated with a layer of gold by the warm sun. Lu Jie was still so excited that he could not say a word. He just looked at Lin Yuan with a firm gaze and bowed deeply. This etiquette was much lower than the etiquette that retainer knights bowed to creation masters. To Lu Jie, this was not a gesture of gratitude but a gesture of faith. Lin Yuan knew that Lu Jie must be feeling a lot at this moment, so he patted Lu Jie's shoulder again. When you entered the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association, I opened a breeding room for you. Go and evolve the Insect Queen into a fantasy breed first. Lin Yuan was very happy for Lu Jie. Although he had wasted 2 years after the Insect Queen became a fantasy breed, Lu Jie might not just be Radiance 100 sequence number 39 this year. Lu Jie nodded vigorously. Even though he was a man of steel, his nose turned sour when he heard Lin Yuan's words, which sounded like he was talking about the blazing warm sun in the middle of winter. After a long while, Lu Jie said in a hoarse voice, "Young Master Lin Yuan, Lin Yuan interrupted Lu Jie. You swore on the willpower rune to become my retainer knight. But you might be my retainer knight, but you're also my friend. Lin Yuan said these words very seriously. Lin Yuan had risen from humble beginnings, so he would not easily treat others as subordinates. Whether it was toward Lu Jia or Wen Yu. As a person who had lived two lives, Lin Yuan understood that the relationship between people, no matter which world they were in, ultimately came down to 4 words. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. Lu Jia looked at the look in Lin Yuan's eyes and was stunned for a long time. Then he nodded heavily and an indescribable warmth spread in his heart. Friend. Lu Jia chewed on this sentence in his heart several times, and his eyes gave off an extreme brilliance. At this moment, to Lin Yuan, Lu Jia in this life, he was a friend, a retainer, and a faith. Fighting alone in the frost hymn, the insect swarm was as vast as the city. The iron blood city was surging outside, the willpower was enlightened, withering and flourishing. It had all turned into perfection at this moment. After sending Lu Jia off, Lin Yuan started to think about what he was going to do during this seclusion in the breeding room. After thinking about it, Lin Yuan realized that he would probably be in seclusion for nearly 2 months. However, after this seclusion, Lin Yuan would have the capital to compete with the Radiance 100 sequence members. Lin Yuan raised his hand and summoned Red Thorn, looking at its true data. Lin Yuan could not help but have high hopes for Red Thorn in the future. Fei name, Red Thorn predatory plant. Fei species, vine subfamily / kingflower. Fei grade, bronze 310. Fei type, source / wood. Fei quality. Epic abilities: frowny face, mouth of relinquish. Secretes an exuberant digestive fluid. The digestive fluid has a strong corrosive nature and can rapidly digest the energy in the food. Armor-piercing vines. Rapidly wrapping the vines and shaking rapidly, increasing the vine's piercing armor-piercing effect. Exclusive skill: frowny face, spore proliferation. The spore cavity spits out a large number of spores. The spores can absorb the energy provided by red thorn or flesh energy to rapidly proliferate and grow child ramets and ramets that are controlled by the mother ramets. Red thorn's true rise started when it reached bronze and the exclusive skill spore proliferation appeared. The exclusive skill spore proliferation immediately changed Red Thorn's combat style. If Red Thorn was said to be a warrior fighting alone, then it had now awakened the exclusive skill spore proliferation. During the battle in the Insect Sea, it was a commander commanding the child ramets and child ramets. However, Lin Yuan believed that Red Thorn's true metamorphosis would be when it reached legend and became a fantasy breed. At that moment, Lin Yuan took out the source-type lifeform acid corrosion queen bee's egg from the leaf-shaped Fey storage box. He immediately read the latest chapter of the Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 171. Next, Lin Yuan was going to place the acid corrosion queen bee's egg in Red Thorn's digestive cavity and let it hatch. Lin Yuan conveyed his thoughts to Red Thorn through spiritual fluctuations, and Red Thorn quickly understood what he meant. Red Thorn used the vine without thorns to wrap around the acid corrosion queen bee's egg in Lin Yuan's hand. However, Red Thorn did not place the acid corrosion queen bee's egg in its digestive cavity. Instead, it used the vine to send the egg into the mouth of Relinquish. After Red Thorn swallowed the acid corrosion queen bee's egg into the mouth of Relinquish, Lin Yuan immediately began to feed Red Thorn a large amount of dimensional lifeforms flesh in the diamond phase storage box. Lin Yuan picked a lot of class 3 alien insect flesh with strong acid in their bodies and fed them into the mouth of Relinquish. After Red Thorn was promoted to bronze grade, Lin Yuan had started to choose class 3 dimensional lifeforms as food, which was equivalent to the energy of a gold fey. After Lin Yuan fed Red Thorn a large amount of class 3 alien insect flesh, he began to circulate the spiritual power in his body and fully activated the mouth of Relinquish. He let the mouth of Relinquish quickly absorb the energy in these class 3 alien insects' flesh. After hatching, the acid corrosion queen bee would immediately build a nest. Lin Yuan did not know how much energy it would consume to build the nest, but it was better to be prepared now. Just like that, Red Thorn stopped eating quickly after about a full day. Instead, it absorbed the class 3 alien insect's flesh's energy at a normal speed. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan stopped circulating his spiritual power and did not fully activate the mouth of Relinquish to digest the dimensional lifeform's flesh. During this day, Lin Yuan had been activating the mouth of Relinquish to digest these class 3 alien insects' flesh, which had consumed a lot of energy. At that moment, A gray bee the size of a thumb crawled out of the flesh-like flower above the mouth of Relinquish. This bee still looked very fragile, but the two stingers on its upper limbs and the stinger at the back of its tail were sharp enough to flash with cold light. Lin Yuan used true data to check this newly hatched acid corrosion queen bee. He found that the acid corrosion queen bee was only a normal eye/normal source-type life form. However, Lin Yuan was rather surprised when he saw the normal eye/normal acid corrosion queen bee. Because Red Thorn had devoured a large amount of Class 3 alien insect flesh, the amount of flesh and energy it absorbed in a day was more than 10 times what it usually absorbed. In other words, the energy of such a large amount of dimensional creature flesh had been used by the newly hatched acid corrosion queen bee to build a nest. He did not know what the nest looked like after the acid corrosion queen bee was born. As the acid corrosion queen bee's nest was in the mouth of Relinquish, Lin Yuan couldn't possibly enter the mouth of Relinquish to check. However, he could sense through Red Thorn that the nest built by the acid corrosion queen bee was not small. This nest was constructed by the acid corrosion queen bee by condensing Red Thorn's digestive fluids into acid crystals. It could be said to be a huge project. When the acid corrosion queen bee had just finished building its nest, he could sense that Red Thorn, which was connected to his bloodline, had signed a contract with this acid corrosion queen bee. He had never known what kind of contract the acid corrosion queen bee would choose to sign with Red Thorn after building the nest. How far could such a contractual relationship go? Now Lin Yuan found that the contract between Red Thorn and the acid corrosion queen bee was simply harsh to the extreme. If Red Thorn was a queen that looked down on the world, then the acid corrosion queen bee was a subordinate at the queen's feet. At that moment, Lin Yuan could sense that the newly hatched acid corrosion queen bee had been releasing spiritual signals to flatter Red Thorn. Such spiritual signals were simply more humble than a peerless bootlicker. Lin Yuan did not have the strength to complain about the acid corrosion queen bee that he had just hatched, as his main task now was to raise its grade. Lin Yuan calmed down and Red Thorn commanded the newly hatched acid corrosion queen bee to fly to Lin Yuan's palm. Lin Yuan brought the acid corrosion queen bee into the spirit lock spatial zone and enhanced the gray and very young acid corrosion queen bee. With the help of the high concentration of spirit chi in the spirit lock spatial zone, the acid corrosion queen bee evolved very quickly. Normal, elite, epic, bronze, legend, silver. Lin Yuan only stopped when the acid corrosion queen bee reached gold. At that moment Lin Yuan finally had a gold fei. Only now did he truly have the combat power of a top expert of the younger generation. Even if he evolved the source-type acid corrosion queen bee to gold in the spirit lock spatial zone, it still took a lot of time. Lin Yuan looked at the time on his phone. It actually took nearly 20 days to evolve a fei from normal eye/normal all the way to gold eye/legend. This was the result of Lin Yuan evolving it with all his might in the spirit lock spatial zone. When Lin Yuan wanted to evolve the acid corrosion queen bee from gold eye again, he found that he really could not do it in a short time. He knew that if he wanted to upgrade a gold phase grade, he would have to become a B-rank spirit chi professional before he could do it easily. However, he was already very satisfied to be able to evolve the acid corrosion queen bee to gold eye/legend. Even if the legend acid corrosion queen bee was only at gold eye/legend, it could still display great combat power. Even if it was only at Legend Eye, its combat power would probably be comparable to a Class 6 or 7 epic fei of the same grade. Now that Lin Yuan looked at the acid corrosion queen bee that he had evolved all the way to gold, he could not help but have a different feeling. The acid corrosion queen bee was currently Lin Yuan's first source-type life form to evolve from normal eye/normal all the way to gold. This sense of accomplishment of evolving life forms washed away Lin Yuan's fatigue for the past 20 days. This was because this sense of accomplishment of evolving life forms was a kind of spiritual sublimation no matter when it was experienced. At that moment, the acid corrosion queen bee's body had grown to about 15 centimeters in length. Its body was long and slender and it had a dark red metallic luster. Under this dark red metallic luster, there were strange dark green stripes, revealing a kind of sinister beauty. The acid corrosion queen bee's upper limbs had two rather thick stingers, and its tail also had two slender stingers, one at the front and one at the back. The stingers were thick while the stingers were sharp and slender. Both stingers had a strange green cold light. The acid corrosion queen bee flew up from Lin Yuan's palm and flew around him intimately before landing on his hand again. Then Lin Yuan felt the acid corrosion queen bee emit an eagerness to see red thorn. Lin Yuan could not help but complain in his heart. What a bootlicker! Lin Yuan simply took the gold acid corrosion queen bee and left the spirit lock spatial zone. Even though the acid corrosion queen bee had evolved to gold, it still carefully fawned on red thorn like before. Red thorn, the landlord, was obviously very cold to its tenant, the acid corrosion queen bee. However, the acid corrosion queen bee did not care, as if red thorn only needed to pay it a little attention, and it would be a great gift. The acid corrosion queen bee happily flew among red thorn's dancing vines and landed on the rose-shaped red flowers on red thorn's digestive cavity from time to rest. At that moment, Lin Yuan carefully checked the acid corrosion queen bee's true data after it evolved to gold/legend. Baidu read the latest chapter of the Beast Evolution Merchant Claw book house for free. Chapter 172. He was looking forward to the true data of the acid corrosion queen bee, which had been promoted to gold/legend. Fey name: acid corrosion queen bee spirit species, Vespidae genus, Fey grade, gold 110. Fey type: source/poison. Fey quality: legend skills, frowny face, wing concealment. The acid corrosion queen bee enters a certain invisible state by flapping its wings at a high frequency. Bone-piercing stinger: extremely hard and powerful rotating stingers can cause bone-piercing injuries. Parasitic pupa: the stinger of the acid corrosion queen bee's forelimb can release a parasitic pupa into the target's body. Acid-devouring larvae: the acid corrosion queen bee will hatch a large number of acid-devouring larvae when it has enough acid. The acid-devouring larvae can be used as the acid corrosion queen bee's food to quickly replenish the acid corrosion queen bee's energy and poison reserves. Exclusive skill, frowny face, second hit kill. The two stingers carry two different kinds of corrosive poison. If the two stingers hit the same part of the target, the two kinds of poison will fuse and disintegrate the target instantly. When he saw the acid corrosion queen bee's ability, Lin Yuan suddenly could not help but complain in his heart. What a cruel bootlicker! Wing stealth greatly increased the acid corrosion queen bee's concealment. Red thorn and the acid corrosion queen bee were a combination. Red thorn released its spores to produce ramets and ramets, spreading the sea of flowers. In a situation where there wasn't a large amount of flesh on the battlefield, red thorn's sea of flowers consumed the energy within its body. Therefore, the sea of flowers was destined to not be as shocking as it was in Millstone Town, and there would not be as many child ramets and ramets. In fact, in the Star Web duel, red thorn was now a bronze source-type life form that could even collide with silver phase in the sea of flowers. However, the child ramets and ramets produced by red thorn's exclusive skill, reproductive spores, weren't meant to kill same-grade phase. Instead, they were used to control the situation. Red thorn's sea of flowers was able to restrain the enemy phase movements within the sea of flowers. At that moment, the acid corrosion queen bee, which was using wing stealth, was a perfect assassin. The bone-penetrating poison needle could pierce through the armor of the phase in the sea of flowers and penetrate the target's bones, causing bone-penetrating damage. However, the ability that caused Lin Yuan's eyes to shrink was the parasitic wasp chrysalis. Parasite chrysalis was such a cruel skill. Lin Yuan had just carefully examined the stinger at the front of the acid corrosion queen bee, and it was hollow. Lin Yuan had always thought that the hollow stinger was used to inject acidic toxins into the target's body. He didn't expect that it was actually used to release the parasitic wasp pupae that were about to hatch. The parasitic pupae of the acid corrosion queen bee had the same growth conditions as the acid corrosion queen bee. The acid corrosion wasp pupae that was about to hatch would instinctively search for the most acidic organ and tissue in the target's body. He drilled into it and hatched it. This was equivalent to saying that if the acid corrosion queen bee were to inject into the target's body, the parasitic pupa that was about to hatch would instinctively burrow into the target's stomach, using the powerful stomach acid in the target's body to incubate. What kind of torture would the parasite pupae inflict on its target? Lin Yuan couldn't imagine the intense pain that went from the skin to the abdomen. What's more, the parasitic pupae that hatched in the stomach would absorb a large amount of stomach acid and nutrients from the target's body. Lin Yuan knew how much acid and energy the acid corrosion queen bee had absorbed from red thorn's mouth of relinquish. However, even if there was a large amount of energy in an ordinary lifeform's body, how could there be so much acid? The absorption of a large amount of stomach acid would destroy the target's stomach function and cause it to wither. If the parasitic pupae felt that the stomach acid was not enough, it would drill into other organs to absorb the acid. If the acid in the target's body did not meet the conditions for the parasitic pupae to hatch, the parasitic pupae would not hatch. However, even if the parasitic pupae did not hatch, the body of the acid corrosion queen bee's parasitic target would have long been destroyed beyond recognition. However, if the acid in the target's body was barely enough for the parasitic pupae to hatch, it would be equivalent to hatching an enemy. The parasitic pupae would break out of the target's body according to the acid corrosion queen bee's command. The parasitic pupae's ability was truly cruel and terrifying. Of course, the parasitic pupae was not without weaknesses. The acid corrosion queen bee had to pierce the target's skin before it could release the parasitic pupae into the target's body. However, the bone-piercing stinger perfectly helped the acid corrosion queen bee solve this weakness. The bone-piercing stinger could break the defense, allowing the acid corrosion queen bee to release the parasitic pupae under the skin pierced by the bone-piercing stinger. Moreover, red thorn's armor-piercing vines also had a certain armor-piercing effect. Previously, Lin Yuan did not understand why the acid corrosion queen bee was called the acid corrosion queen bee. However, after seeing the acid corrosion queen bee's gold ability, acid-swallowing larvae, he understood. The acid corrosion queen bee was an extremely cruel source-type life form by nature. A queen bee would give birth to pups in a built hive. However, all the pups were just rations for the acid corrosion queen bee to recover. However, it was these acid-swallowing larvae that greatly increased the acid corrosion queen bee's endurance in battle. However, these abilities were not the acid corrosion queen bee's most powerful killing means. The acid corrosion queen bee's most powerful killing means were the exclusive skills it had comprehended at bronze. 2 fatal strikes. The acid corrosion queen bee's tail had 2 sharp stingers. These 2 stingers contained 2 different kinds of bee venom. These 2 super toxic bee venoms might not be strong individually, but if they came into contact, they would immediately produce a strong reaction, instantly corroding and disintegrating the parts of the target's body that came into contact with the bee venom. The most powerful thing about this 2 fatal strikes was that it did not require armor piercing. Even if the stingers only injected 2 kinds of venom into the target's armor, it would also produce a huge reaction, corroding and disintegrating the target's armor. Then Lin Yuan tested the acid corrosion queen bee's exclusive skill, 2 fatal strikes. Lin Yuan looked at the corroded and disintegrated metal spiritual materials in his hand and had a better understanding of the acid corrosion queen bee's exclusive skill, 2 fatal strikes. If this acid corrosion queen bee's stingers could stab a platinum fey, the part that was hit would be severely corroded or even disintegrated, unless it had a super strong defense. However, it was not easy for the acid corrosion queen bee to use 2 stingers to hit the same part of a platinum fey twice. Lin Yuan was very satisfied with this gold eye/legend source type life form, the acid corrosion queen bee. As the acid corrosion queen bee danced among red thorn's vines with a relaxed look, Lin Yuan could not help but think of the cruelty behind the acid corrosion queen bee's appearance, especially the 2 stingers that were brewing a second kill. It was really like the saying went, the most poisonous thing is the wasp's stingers. In the natural world, the queen bee was responsible for the colony's production in the hive. However, the acid corrosion queen bee was not like this. The acid corrosion queen bee's progeny, acid-swallowing larvae, were just like the food that it had saved in advance. On one side, the acid corrosion queen bee humbly fawned on red thorn like the most loyal bootlicker. On the other side, it cruelly treated its progeny and enemies. Such an acid corrosion queen bee could be said to be a contradiction, but it was strong enough. Lin Yuan stretched and stored red thorn and the acid corrosion queen bee in its body into the diamond leaf-shaped face storage box. Red thorn and the acid corrosion queen bee, which had just evolved to gold, needed a lot of nutrients and now was the best time for them to do so. Lin Yuan did not choose to rest and summon Chimey. Chimey, which was summoned by Lin Yuan, seemed to be in a daze. In the past, Chimey was the most noisy and clingy. However, Chimey was frowning and had a difficult expression on its face, which made Lin Yuan a little worried. Why did Yining suddenly become depressed? Baidwan read the latest chapter of the Imperial Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 173. Lin Yuan was rather worried as he communicated with Chimey. However, when Chimey transmitted a spiritual wave, Lin Yuan was startled. Looking at Chimey flying around in anticipation, Lin Yuan cleared his throat and said, "If you want to evolve into a human form, you need to reach suzerain and myth 2. If you want to evolve into a human, you'll need to advance to the suzerain tier and reach myth 2. Chimey had always been cheerful and would stick to him and hum songs every day. Since when did the carefree Chimey become so obsessed with becoming a human form? Since when did the carefree Chimey have such an obsession with becoming a human form? If Genius were here, it would definitely hide under the stool and cover its eyes with its small claws, not daring to look at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan had not used Genius' specialized transformation to turn it into a pair of glasses or a mask to wear on its face. Therefore, the idle Genius had become Chimey's live-streaming room manager in the Spirit Lock spatial zone again. Genius's return saved Chimey, which had been in a fluster. During the live-streaming process, Genius had helped Chimey solve all kinds of problems. Even when Chimey went to PK with other live streamers, Genius, as the 1,000 Questions Beast, helped Chimey solve the problem flawlessly. If Genius had not quickly made a move to solve it, Chimey would have revealed its original form because the GIF would disappear during the PK. However, a lot of things had happened in Chimey's live streaming room in recent days. First, Rank 2 surpassed Rank 1, causing a lot of popularity in Chimey's live streaming room. Then the bullet screen suddenly flooded with a fan meet and greet. After Chimey understood what the fan meet and greet was, it had an idea. However, when it thought that it was just a bird, it could not help but sigh. In Chimey's eyes, Lin Yuan had always been omnipotent, so it asked Lin Yuan how it could transform into a human form. Sure enough, Lin Yuan's answer answered Chimey's question. After hearing Lin Yuan's answer, Chimey immediately became happy. Its mind was filled with thoughts of reaching suzerain/myth 2 and transforming into a human form. Then it would hold a glorious fan meet and greet. Just thinking about it made Chimey feel elated. As it thought about it, it became a little nervous and secretly looked at Lin Yuan with a guilty conscience. After all, Lin Yuan did not know about its singing. Chimey wondered what it would do if Lin Yuan found out that it was live streaming on Star Web and was unhappy. However, when Chimey saw Lin Yuan looking at it with worry in his eyes, it happily jumped on Lin Yuan's ear. She intimately used her little head to rub the stray hair beside Lin Yuan's ear. Chimey thought, Lin Yuan treats me so well, so he wouldn't be so fierce to me. If he doesn't like me singing, then I won't sing on Star Web anymore. I'll only sing for him and beside him. Lin Yuan had seen that Chimey had been filled with worries earlier, but it was now extremely happy. He could not help but rub Chimey's little head with his fingers. Even so, Lin Yuan was still kept in the dark by Chimey. He thought that Chimey had been so sentimental because it had entered puberty. Chimey flew down from Lin Yuan's ear and landed on his fingertips, jumping around. After playing with Chimey for a while and seeing that it had regained its usual liveliness, Lin Yuan was relieved. Lin Yuan looked at Chimey and said with a serious expression, Chimey, if you want to transform into a human form, then evolving into a fantasy breed will be the most important step for your future development. If Lin Yuan was most worried about his contracted phase evolving, it would undoubtedly be Chimey and Genius. At first, Chimey was just a sound bird that had failed to evolve into a normal songstress bird. However, Chimey had already evolved into a flowing cloud azure bird and walked on a path that no sound bird had taken before. Therefore, Chimey could be said to be the pioneer of the sound bird species in terms of evolution. Meanwhile, Lin Yuan was the person who had created this great miracle of life. Chimey, a little fellow that was abandoned when it was just born, was brought onto a path that needed to be opened up by itself through brambles and thorns. This path might be obstructive and difficult, but it would definitely be the most dazzling. When Chimey sensed Lin Yuan's seriousness, it also became very serious. Upon hearing that this was the first step to transform into a human form, Chimey's eyes lit up. At that moment, Chimey's small body was filled with indomitable determination. Lin Yuan used his spiritual energy to summon the willpower rune from the rising sun. This willpower rune was very compatible with Chimey's exclusive skill, Clear Sky, and Lin Yuan also wanted Chimey to evolve along this path. Only by choosing a general direction of evolution could its future development be broader and smoother. The moment Lin Yuan summoned the willpower rune that he had comprehended in the rising sun, the cloud patterns on Chimey's body lit up. As Chimey flapped its wings, it flew toward this twilight willpower rune. Chimey fused with this twilight willpower rune. It was as though Chimey had thrown itself into the first rays of dawn. In this dazzling light, Chimey kept chirping, its voice filled with pain. When he had sensed the evolution of the sharp iron horn bull into the fantasy breed obsidian iron wild bull, he had known that life evolution was a path that required one to step on thorns and walk barefoot, honing one step at a time. Upon hearing Chimey's painful chirping, Lin Yuan's heart ached, but there was nothing he could do. This was because behind this chirping pain was a new life that was slowly rising. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly heard a clear chirp that was very similar to Chimey's previous chirp, but it was more pleasant and crisp. This chirp seemed to contain the breeze, the raindrops, the wind blowing the wheat, the first rays of dawn, the dew washing away the dust, and the cold plum blossoms. This sound seemed to be the most essential sound in the depths of nature, engraved with all the subtleties in the depths of nature. After Chimey's chirp transformed, the light did not converge. Instead it became brighter. Lin Yuan saw an emerald blue bird fly out of this joyous light, and there seemed to be a few slightly raised feathers on its forehead. These feathers made the emerald blue bird look abnormally gentle and beautiful. The emerald blue feathers seemed to be the purest blue sky above the dome. The cloud patterns on the emerald blue bird stirred up clouds as it flew, and the cloud patterns on the feathers seemed to give birth to stars. When Chimey flapped its wings, there seemed to be stars twinkling in the clouds. When Chimey saw Lin Yuan, it did not come over to get close to him. Instead, it chirped in the breeding room and happily displayed its ability to Lin Yuan. Then there seemed to be a clear light sprinkling down in the breeding room. Lin Yuan knew that this was Chimey using its exclusive skill, Clear Sky. The sun's radiance was sprinkling straight at Chimey from outside the window. In an instant, Chimey, which was originally not as big as a fist, was suddenly dyed with this layer of clear light. A layer of glass-like flames ignited on its wingspan, and the emerald blue feathers instantly turned into a faint golden color. This golden color was not the color of metal, but the dazzling radiance of the sun's clear radiance. At that moment, Chimey's wingspan, which was burning with a glass-like flame, was nearly 1 meter long when stretched out. The cloud patterns on its body stirred up clouds, and the stars in the cloud patterns suddenly lit up. The stars collided as though they had fused into a rising sun. At that moment, Lin Yuan felt majestic energy from Chimey's body. However, when Chimey chirped and showed Lin Yuan its transformed appearance, the brilliance on its body suddenly disappeared in less than half a minute, and it turned back into the original emerald blue bird. As he looked at Chimey, which had fallen asleep in his arms, Lin Yuan revealed a helpless and doting smile. If Lin Yuan hadn't caught it in time, Chimey would have fallen to the ground. Lin Yuan could not help but sigh when he looked at the slightly raised feathers on Chimey's forehead and the new stars in the cloud patterns on its wings. In terms of appearance, there were probably few small fays that could compare to Chimey. Chimey's current appearance was really good at fighting. If it participated in the top 10 most beautiful face selection, it would probably be on the list if it did not only have one. At that moment, Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check the attributes of Chimey, which had evolved into a fantasy breed. He immediately read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 174. Under True Data, Chimey was no longer a flowing cloud azure bird but had transformed into a twilight starbird when it had become a fantasy breed. As he looked at the sleeping Chimey, Lin Yuan felt an indescribable pride in his heart. So what if it was a phoenix's nirvana? A phoenix's nirvana was just a phoenix evolving into a phoenix. Chimey had evolved from an abandoned sound bird that had failed to evolve into a songstress bird. It had been reborn and grown into a fantasy breed twilight starbird. After sleeping for a long time, Chimey slowly woke up. Chimey, who had woken up, was still a little weak. It took a long time for it to recover. Chimey, which had recovered, flew intimately to Lin Yuan's ear. It had clearly treated Lin Yuan's ear as its exclusive territory. After playing with Chimey for a while, Lin Yuan took it into the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Lin Yuan began to enhance Chimey in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. This time Lin Yuan enhanced Chimey at Bronze X/Fantasy I, the same as when he had enhanced the Jasmine Lily at Bronze X/Fantasy I. It took them nearly a month to finish all of them. A month later, Lin Yuan upgraded Chimey from Bronze X/Fantasy I to Silver I/Fantasy I. Lin Yuan could not help but sigh when he sensed Chimy's state after it became a silver fantasy breed. Every time a fantasy breed Fae advanced a grade, it would undergo an earth-shattering change. This was a true sense of a torrent-like transformation in the life history of a species. After Chimy became a fantasy breed and transformed into a twilight starbird, its elemental had changed from the previous sound elemental and gas elemental to the current sound elemental and light elemental. According to normal evolution, Chimy's newly evolved gas elemental would not easily disappear after transforming into a fantasy breed. When Chimy had been at elite, it had become a flowing cloud azure bird because it had comprehended the gas elemental attribute. This had also allowed Chimy to not be limited to the sound elemental and embark on a broader path. However, after Chimy had evolved into a fantasy breed and fused with the Twilight Willpower rune, it had replaced the gas elemental attribute. Logically speaking, it should have been the sound elemental attribute that had been replaced. Lin Yuan did not know that Chimy, which was jumping around on him, was filled with a strong obsession with the sound elemental attribute. When Chimy had first met Lin Yuan, it had been introverted and had low self-esteem. As a sound bird that had failed to evolve into a songstress bird, Chimy didn't even know how to sing a complete song. It was Lin Yuan's company that had swept away the dust on Chimy's life in Meng City and cast a beam of light that was warmer than the Twilight Willpower rune. Lin Yuan had patiently taught Chimy the first song over and over again. He didn't want Chimy to think that it was a sound bird that could be casually thrown away. It was Lin Yuan who let Chimy know the feeling of being doted on. He had also allowed Chimy to evolve step by step until it had become a twilight azure bird. At that time, the simple ballad that Lin Yuan had taught Chimy had witnessed their meeting. Therefore, this song was the obsession in Chimy's heart. It was unwilling to erase it even in its death during its metamorphosis. All of this was Chimy's obsession, as well as a miracle in the history of the sound bird's evolution. Miracles happen every day in life. It was precisely because of the various miracles that the river of life had evolved to such a magnificent scale. Lin Yuan carefully observed Chimy's true data at Silver Eye/Fantasy Eye. Fey name, Twilight Starbird, Fey species, Plume Sparrow/Starlight Bird, Fey grade, Silver 110. Fey type, Sound/Light, Fey quality, Fantasy Eye abilities Frowny Fey sound thrust. Fires 3 sharp thorns formed by sound at a designated target. Scattered light. The body emits scattered rays of light that have burning and controlling effects. Sunlight ray. Emits various rays from the sun that will cause negative weakening to the target. Exclusive skill Frowny Face Clear Sky. After a clear bird's chirp, the clouds will disperse and the sky will clear up. Radiant body. Quickly absorb the sun's power and a large amount of sun energy will gather in the body to form the radiant body. Due to the change in Chimy's element, chaotic flow, which it had comprehended at elite, had become scattered light. When Chimy flapped its wings, it would emit scattered light rays that had burning and control effects. Compared to chaotic flow, scattered light obviously had increased lethality, but its control ability should be much weaker. As for the sunlight ray that it had comprehended at silver, Lin Yuan was somewhat speechless. Lin Yuan could not help but want to drill into Chimy's little head to see what it was thinking. How did Chimy comprehend all kinds of harmful rays in such a beautiful blazing sun's light to weaken and control the target? There were all kinds of harmful rays in the sun's rays. These harmful rays had radiation-like destructive significance to life, and Chimy controlled these rays to use on the target. These rays might cause dizziness, nausea, armor piercing, and a series of other negative effects. It was considered a kind of all-round weakening. However, one would only know how strong the sunlight rays' weakening was after fighting on the star web. As for the radiant body, which Chimy had comprehended after becoming a fantasy breed twilight bluebird, Lin Yuan had already felt the terrifying energy contained in the radiant body when Chimy had used it earlier. Chimy had enhanced itself with the sun's power, and the glazed flames on its body had caused its body size to increase exponentially. The destructive power that it carried in that instant could simply be called a trump card. However, the time that Chimy had entered the radiant body had been too short, just over 30 seconds. After the 30-second burst, Chimy's spiritual power would be overdrawn, and its physical strength would be exhausted. It would then fall into a coma. Although Chimy's radiant body only had a short burst, it could be considered a trump card of Lin Yuan's. When Chimey had become a silver/fantasy breed, Lin Yuan had let it use the radiant body and found that the time it could persist in the radiant body state had increased from half a minute to nearly 1 minute. This time, Lin Yuan carefully sensed the energy contained in Chimey's radiant body when it entered its state. If this energy burst out in an instant, the impact would be nearly twice as strong as the gold acid corrosion queen bee's all-out attack. Moreover, Chimey did not rely on physical attacks under the radiant body but the pure burning ability of the glazed flames. Among the two exclusive skills that Chimey had comprehended, Clear Sky could be used perfectly with the radiant body. It could ensure that Chimey would be able to absorb the light from the sun or stars under any circumstances. At the same time, Chimey's silver fantasy breed ability, Sun Ray, could help Red Thorn and the acid corrosion queen bee weaken the target. This way, Lin Yuan's current phase could use their abilities to form a set of combat system. If Lin Yuan were to climb the tower on Star Web now, he could use the Jasmine Lily to heal, the Spirit Gather Goldfish to restore spiritual power, and the Blue Flash Purple Butterfly to control. After tool transformation, Genius Mask and Glasses would have the effect of seeing through the target's weakness. Coupled with Red Thorn, the Acid Corrosion Queen Bee and Chimey's main attack, it should not be difficult for Lin Yuan to reach the 100th step and pass the promotion duel. Read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 175. After being in seclusion for close to 2 months, Lin Yuan was truly tired. He carried Genius, who was squatting at the side, and Chimey, who was chirping non-stop. Lin Yuan leaned on the sofa in the lounge and closed his eyes to have a good sleep. It was just like 5 months ago in the Xia region's Fei store, when Lin Yuan, Chimey and Genius were snuggling together and sleeping. Lin Yuan's expression was so peaceful and tranquil. Chimey and Genius were leaning on the youth's body as though they were leaning on the entire world. This youth's not-so-broad shoulders were like a mountain, completely supporting the two little fellows' reliance. Time had changed and people had also changed. However, their original hearts had not changed. Back in the Xia region's Fei store, there was the sickly youth, the malnourished 100 questions beast, and the sound bird that had failed to evolve into a songstress bird and was treated as trash. They had already obtained a new life. This sickly youth had already become the prodigy of the younger generation. The other two little beasts that were despised had also grown up with the youth, becoming the pioneers of the sound bird and 100 questions beast's evolution. They had evolved on a path that had no precedence. Lin Yuan had barely rested for the past 2 months and he was truly exhausted. He slept very soundly and couldn't help but snore. Chimey shrunk into Lin Yuan's neck and seemed especially at ease. However, Chimey's slight movements had obviously woken Genius up. Genius let out a sleepy meow and looked at Lin Yuan. It then picked up a towel blanket from the sofa at the side. She carefully covered Lin Yuan's body with the towel and blanket before burrowing into it and sleeping soundly in Lin Yuan's embrace. When Lin Yuan woke up, he was a little surprised when he saw the time. He had actually slept for 2 full days. As soon as he woke up, Lin Yuan immediately felt his stomach protesting. Goo 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 goo. He took out the rations and fruits that he had stored in the leaf-shaped Fei storage box and started eating them. When Lin Yuan got up from the sofa, he was very careful as he was afraid of waking up Genius and Chimey. However, the sweetness of the fruits had woken them up from their dreams. Upon seeing that Genius and Chimey had woken up, he fed Genius a platinum cane loofah and Chimey a platinum celery vine. Chimey and Genius surrounded Lin Yuan and obediently waited for Lin Yuan to feed them. It was a warm scene. Lin Yuan cut the cane loofah into small pieces and tore the celery vine before feeding it to Genius and Chimey. Subsequently, he stored Genius and Chimey in the Spirit Lock spatial zone and walked out of the breeding room in high spirits. At this time, the sunlight outside the window was just right. Even though it was late autumn, the bright sunlight shone through the window into the cultivation room, making it feel warm and cozy. As soon as he walked out of the breeding room, he noticed a person standing at the door. This person was none other than Lu Jie. When Lu Jie saw Lin Yuan, he immediately revealed a simple and honest smile. Lin Yuan did not expect Lu Jie to be waiting for him at the breeding room's entrance. What happens after the insect queen becomes a fantasy breed? Lu Jie's eyes flashed with a dazzling luster as he looked at Lin Yuan and said solemnly, "Very strong." Lin Yuan knew that Lu Jie was not someone who boasted. Since Lu Jie said it was very strong, it must be very strong. It seemed that the exclusive skill that the insect queen had comprehended after becoming a fantasy breed had greatly improved Lu Jie's combat power. There was no complacency on Lu Jie's face, only solemnity. Lu Jie lowered his head and looked at the small shield engraved above the two-star crest hanging on his chest. This shield would be Lu Jie's most tenacious destiny in life in the future. It was just like what Lu Jie was thinking. Lu Jie believed that the insect queen's evolution into a fantasy breed was just to make this shield that guarded the two stars tougher. Being strong was to protect. In the past, Lu Jie protected a part of the world. In the future, Lu Jie would be protecting the youth in front of him. Lin Yuan and Lu Jie walked out of the royal capital's Creation Master Association side by side. Lin Yuan suddenly thought of Wen Yu. Before Lin Yuan had come to the royal capital's Creation Master Association for seclusion, Wen Yu had taken over the development of the manor's land. Lin Yuan gave Qing Wu's beetle-shaped diamond face storage box that contained radiance dollars to Wen Yu. This was because no matter what Wen Yu did to develop this land, she would have to spend money. In the past 2 months, Lin Yuan was really a little worried about Wen Yu. Although Wen Yu had taken over the task at that time, it was really difficult for a teenage girl to manage the entire manor's construction. Lin Yuan thought that since Lu Jie had come out of the breeding room in advance, he should know Wen Yu's current situation. Lin Yuan looked at Lu Jie and asked, "How's the situation on Wen Yu's side?" Lu Jie actually did not spend much time promoting the insect queen into a fantasy breed. Lu Jie, who had come out of the breeding room, knew before entering that Lin Yuan would be in seclusion for more than 2 months. Therefore, after coming out, Lu Jie went straight to the location of the land that Lin Yuan had spent 7.5 million radiance dollars to buy. He was going to help Wen Yu. However, Lu Jie had just gone to help for less than a day when he was driven back by Wen Yu. Under Wen Yu's godly operation, Lu Jie found that no matter what he did, he was more of a hindrance. Now that Lin Yuan asked, Lu Jie could only scratch his head awkwardly and did not know what to say. It was really hard to explain in a few words. When Lin Yuan saw Lu Jie's expression, he knew that something must have happened. However, when Lin Yuan and Lu Jie came to the previous piece of land, Lin Yuan's expression also became the same as Lu Jie's. Lin Yuan's expression had also become the same as Lu Jie's, blank and silly. If others saw Lu Jie and Lin Yuan like this, they would probably send Lu Jie and Lin Yuan to the hospital's psychiatric department for treatment. Lin Yuan felt that the scene in front of him was simply too shocking. Before Lin Yuan had entered seclusion, it had been an open space full of all kinds of old facilities. Now, an elegant manor had been built on this open space. The environment in this manor naturally could not be compared to the Radiant Moon Palace, but it was definitely ranked among the top in the royal capital. Inside, there were 2 rows of exquisitely shaped ponds that were distributed by an artificial lake on both sides of the road. A large manor with only 3 floors but an area of nearly 1,000 square meters rose from the ground. This large manor's shape was simple and unadorned, and the design was carved with all kinds of auspicious fays. On the eaves and beams of the large manor, there were also wind chimes carved with beautiful jade. When the autumn wind blew, they gave off faint chimes with a strong poetic and picturesque feeling. The open space in front of the manor had not been decorated yet, but behind this 3-story, 1,000 square meter large manor was planted with a 3,000 meter long bamboo forest. There was a tree-shaded path in the bamboo forest. At the end of the bamboo forest was a pavilion that was greenish-white. The 4 corners of the pavilion were white cranes spreading their wings to fly, and the pavilion was engraved with faint lotus patterns, looking rather elegant. Next to the pavilion was a quiet pool. Behind the pavilion was a clear stream that connected to a valley. There was a feeling of scenery from all directions gathered in one pavilion. What an immortal scenery! Lin Yuan could not help but wonder if he had been in seclusion for 2 months or 2 years. Although he did not know how Wen Yu had done it, he could not help but sigh when he saw the beautiful scenery in the distance. The bamboo path leads to a secluded place, and the jade stream flows through the valley. At that moment, Lu Jie could not help but grin when he heard Lin Yuan's words. He felt that Lin Yuan's heart was simply too big. Baidu read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 176. He looked at the clear scenery in front of him. The bamboo forest, the valley, and the spring flow matched with the cool autumn wind. It was a manor that could almost be called a bear's roar, dragon's roar, and the chestnut deep in the forest. Lu Jie was stunned by the beauty, but the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch. Lu Jie could not help but recall how when you had spent a lot of radiance dollars to invite 3 spirit chi professionals with diamond earth-turning giant elephants from the Lifestyle Class Construction Association when he had first arrived. They had used the earth-turning giant elephant's exclusive skill earth-turning wrath to crush all the old facilities in this manner, including the underground foundation, into dust. Then the earth-turning giant elephants would use their ability earth pressure to compact the ground that had turned into dust. Under Wen Yu's command, a major project that would normally take a few months was completed in less than half a day. Even though Lu Jie was sequence number 39 of the Radiance 100, this was the first time he had thought that someone would hire diamond earth-turning giant elephants to demolish old facilities. This was something that ordinary people did not even dare to think about. Although these 3 diamond-grade earth-turning mammoths were only at excellent grade, and they might not have the potential to level up again in the future, the earth-turning mammoths were still of excellent grade. However, these 3 diamond earth-turning giant elephants were the Royal Capital's Construction Association's trump cards. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was the radiance dollars that Wen Yu had thrown out with a wave of her hand. Even if the price of the 3 diamond earth-turning giant elephants was slightly lower, he would probably be able to buy another piece of land like this. Lu Jie had always felt that women were very cute creatures. However, after Wen Yu's show, Lu Jie felt that the most terrifying thing in this world was not the dimensional rift. It was a woman who held a lot of money and waved it energetically. At that moment, Lin Yuan and Lu Jie saw Wen Yu holding a long list in her hand as she walked out of this large stronghold. When Wen Yu saw Lin Yuan, she happily trotted over and said, "Young master, you're done with your seclusion. Look at how well I've developed this land." Lu Jie could not help but swallow his saliva. Lin Yuan looked at Wen Yu's expression that looked like she was waiting to be praised, so he first praised her. "This place is really well developed, but how exactly did you develop it?" Lin Yuan was really a little curious. "How exactly did you develop this place?" Lin Yuan was rather curious as to how the manor could be built to this state in just 2 months. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, Wen Yu's eyes immediately lit up and she spoke without stopping. 3 diamond earth-turning mammoths dismantled the old facilities. However, I felt that the compacted soil of the old facilities wasn't fertile enough, so I got another 500,000 kilograms of high-grade energy ores and found 2 diamond earth-turning titan bears to bury these 500,000 kilograms of high-grade energy ores deep in the soil of the manor. Lin Yuan's brows twitched wildly as he swallowed his saliva and asked carefully, "Where did the 3 diamond earth-turning mammoths and the 2 diamond earth-flowing titan bears come from?" Wen Yu said with a sweet smile. "The Architect Union." Wen Yu continued, "After demolishing those old facilities and flattening the land, we'll have to do it. I looked for a Class 4 Spirit Craftsman team from the Spirit Craftsman Association for the construction of the courtyard and got them to work day and night. They finally finished the project yesterday afternoon. Among the lifestyle class Spirit Chi occupations, the Spirit Craftsman Association was a large association. For example, the construction union's business included leveling the land and designing the blueprints of houses. The Spirit Craftsman Association was responsible for the construction of the blueprints. A Class 4 Spirit Craftsman, Class 4 Scholar, Class 4 Fey Observer, and Class 4 Spiritual Ingredient Analyst had similar statuses. A Class 4 Spirit Craftsman's status might not be comparable to a Class 4 Creation Master's, but he had a pivotal status in the Radiance Federation. If a Class 4 Spirit Craftsman team worked day and night for 2 months, it would be possible to build such a huge manor. At that moment, Wen Yu took out the beetle-shaped diamond phase storage box that Lin Yuan had given her. Wen Yu handed them to Lin Yuan with both hands. "Yesterday afternoon I found a cleaning team to clean the manor that was just built by the Class 4 Spirit Craftsman team." When Lin Yuan took the beetle-shaped diamond phase storage box from Wen Yu's hands, he felt a chill down his spine. After scanning with his spiritual energy, he realized that not a single radiance dollar was missing from the beetle-shaped diamond phase storage box. Lin Yuan could not help but look at her with some confusion. Previously, Lin Yuan was still thinking that the mansion was using the earth-toppling giant elephant to demolish the old facilities. He had also used the soil-flowing titan bear to bury 50,000 kilograms of high-grade energy ores in the soil to fertilize the soil. He had also found a Class 4 Spirit Craftsman team to work overnight. How many radiance dollars would this cost? He did not expect that such a huge project would not cost a single radiance dollar in the end. When you saw Lin Yuan's puzzled gaze, she first turned to look at Lu Jie, who was beside Lin Yuan, and then at the retainer crest on Lu Jie's chest. She then said softly, "When Lord Mystic Moon came to look for young master, he knew that young master was in seclusion at the Royal Capital's Creation Master Association. When he saw that I was preparing to demolish these old facilities, he took over the project from me. After some arrangements, he handed me over to be the supervisor." While speaking, Wen Yu stuck out her tongue. Wen Yu saw that the retainer crest on Lu Jie's chest was not engraved with a moon rune, which proved that Lin Yuan did not change Lu Jie's retainer crest after becoming the Moon Empress disciple. Wen Yu did not know if Lu Jie knew Lin Yuan's identity as the Radiant Moon Palace's young lord. Therefore, Wen Yu only said Lord Mystic Moon and did not mention the title. There was only one person in the Radiance Federation who could be called Mystic Moon. If Wen Yu was allowed to build the mansion herself, even if there were enough radiance dollars in the beetle-shaped diamond face storage box that Lin Yuan had given her, she would not be so extravagant. As Lin Yuan's creation master assistant, Wen Yu understood her identity and naturally would not do anything that would harm Lin Yuan in the slightest. However, after Mystic Moon took over the construction of the mansion, Wen Yu was no longer soft-hearted when it came to spending money. In any case, it was not Lin Yuan who would pay in the end but Mystic Moon. As the Radiant Moon Palace's spirit attendant, Wen Yu had infinite respect for Mystic Moon, the moon envoys of the Radiant Moon Palace. Now that Wen Yu had become Lin Yuan's assistant, she naturally had to make more plans for Lin Yuan. Therefore, Wen Yu did not save any money for Mystic Moon on the construction materials of this mansion. The construction materials used were the best that the Spirit Craftsman Association could provide. In fact, as the Radiant Moon Palace's spirit attendant, Wen Yu's vision was naturally not what others could compare to. Mobilizing these diamond earth-turning giant elephants might be very shocking to Lu Jie, but Wen Yu did not feel anything. There were many rare fays in the Radiant Moon Palace. Just take the two unique diamond/legend silver stamen gold luster caches in front of the Radiant Moon Palace. Wen Yu could see them every day, so she had long been used to it. Baidu read the latest chapter of the Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 177. If Wen Yu wanted to save money for Lin Yuan, she didn't have to reveal Lin Yuan's identity as the Radiant Moon Palace's young lord. Just by revealing her identity as a Radiant Moon Palace's spirit attendant, the experts in the royal capital would probably line up to help build the manor. However, as a Radiant Moon Palace's spirit attendant, Wen Yu had a pride that came from her soul toward everyone except Lin Yuan. This pride in her soul didn't refer to her domineering attitude, but the extreme arrogance. Such pride made Wen Yu not accept help from anyone who wanted to curry favor with the Radiant Moon Palace. Lin Yuan knew that the Lord Mystic that Wen Yu mentioned could only be Mystic Moon. Lin Yuan didn't expect Mystic Moon to help build this manor. Lin Yuan took out his cell phone and dialed Mystic Moon's number. In a lotus pond, all kinds of lotus flowers were swallowing and emitting mist. Multicolored light was emitted from the lotus flowers and rose in the inner palace. Furthermore, it reflected the pond of green water. The platinum spirit siphon goldfish's tail splashed water as though it had turned the water into a breeze that blended into the multicolored light. However, all this beauty was disrupted by a silver-robed man who was smiling awkwardly at the side of the lotus pond. The Moon Empress glanced at Mystic Moon and felt that the spirit tea in her mouth wasn't fragrant anymore. The Moon Empress had asked Mystic Moon to fetch a spirit savory pig from the Chef Supreme. The spirit savory pig was a fey unique to the Class 5 Creation Master Chef Supreme. It was just like the Radiant Moon Palace's silver stamen gold luster kasha, but the effect of the spirit savory pig wasn't like the silver stamen gold luster kasha, which could wash out the body's impurities. The spirit savory pig was only a type of ingredient, but one would know what it was like to eat the meat of the spirit savory pig. Because of this, the spirit savory pig's meat was known as the best meat in the world. The Moon Empress originally wanted to ask Lin Yuan to eat the delicacies made from the spirit savory pig, but after asking Mystic Moon to look for Lin Yuan, she found out that he was in seclusion again. The Moon Empress couldn't help but sigh when she found out that Lin Yuan was in seclusion. My disciple is too hardworking. How can there be such a hardworking disciple in this world? This is really showing how useless I am as a master. But just now, when you came to the Radiant Moon Palace to find Lin Yuan, only then did the Moon Empress know that the mystic moon had helped Lin Fan build a manor, and this immediately infuriated her. How could my disciple lack money? Even if Qingwu was poor, he still had a lot of savings. It was enough to build 3 manors. As the master, I didn't even help because I was afraid that my disciple wouldn't agree, but you actually went to the manor and intercepted it. Mystic Moon naturally understood the Moon Empress' thoughts. Mystic Moon might have an awkward and fearful expression, but he was very grateful to Lin Yuan and was very happy for the Moon Empress. In the past 10 years, the Moon Empress' emotional fluctuations had not been as vivid as when she had accepted Lin Yuan as her disciple. When the Moon Empress wanted to accept a disciple, Mystic Moon as one of the Moon Envoys, naturally wouldn't have any objections. But when it came to Lin Yuan, Mystic Moon was merely aware of the Moon Empress' feelings. However, through their interactions she had unknowingly acknowledged Lin Yuan from the bottom of her heart. He was the Moon Empress' disciple. The Radiant Moon Palace's Little Highness. Suddenly Xianyu laughed out loud. After the Radiant Moon Palace had the young lord, it wasn't just the Moon Empress, but the entire Radiant Moon Palace had become lively. The Moon Empress already felt that the spirit tea in her mouth wasn't fragrant anymore. But after hearing Xianyu's laughter, she suddenly felt that the spirit tea in her mouth was a little bitter. Before the Moon Empress could speak, Xianyu's phone rang. Xianyu took out his phone and silently cursed. Lin Yuan actually called at this moment. Xianyu sneaked a glance at the Moon Empress, but the Moon Empress let out a snort and ignored him. Xianyu then picked up the phone. After Lin Yuan dialed the number, he said, "Uncle Mystic? I heard from Wenyu that you were the one who helped me build the manor." Lin Yuan didn't know how to address Xianyu. Xianyu always said that he couldn't address him as Senior Xian. Xianyu and his master, the Moon Empress, were of the same generation, so Lin Yuan simply addressed him as Uncle Mystic. When Xianyu heard Lin Yuan address him as Uncle Mystic, the usually calm Xianyu choked on his own saliva. He coughed. Although he was coughing in a sorry state, Xianyu's heart surged with warmth. Uncle Mystic? This was the first time someone called him that, and it was strange yet intimate. Your Young Highness, I looked for a master from the Construction Association to design the manor. Are you satisfied? If not, ask Wenyu to look for a spirit craftsman team to modify the manor. Lin Yuan originally wanted to say something else, but when he heard Xianyu seriously considering whether he was satisfied with the manor or not, Lin Yuan couldn't say anything that would seem distant. What kind of expert was Xianyu? How could there be a lack of things to do every day? However, she was putting in so much effort for the construction of his manor. Unknowingly, Lin Yuan felt that the Radiant Moon Palace wasn't just his master, the Moon Empress, that gave him a sense of belonging. Uncle Mystic, this manor's design is very good. Xianyu's clear laughter came from the phone. It's good that you like it. Wenyu is rather dependable and has put in a lot of effort as a supervisor. Xianyu praised Wenyu. Previously, Xianyu didn't pay any attention to Wenyu as a spirit attendant. However, Xianyu was rather impressed by Wenyu's capability in the construction of the manor. Lin Yuan's manor wasn't small, and when Xianyu was constructing the manor, she was thinking if she should recommend 2 more spirit attendants to help Lin Yuan. However, Wenyu's capability made Xianyu dispel this idea. After hanging up the phone, Xianyu looked at the Moon Empress who was drinking tea and looking at him. Xianyu couldn't help but shrink his neck. At that moment, the Moon Empress' phone rang. The Moon Empress picked up the phone and immediately revealed a smile. After hanging up the phone, Xianyu heard the Moon Empress asking, "If you have a disciple, what should you give him?" Xianyu's brows couldn't help but twitch. Wasn't the Moon Empress asking about what to give to Lin Yuan? Xianyu's brows couldn't help but twitch. Wasn't the Moon Empress asking about what to give to Lin Yuan? Xianyu didn't dare to give any random ideas for such a matter. If something went wrong and Lin Yuan didn't accept it, wouldn't the Moon Empress send him to the desert to do a mission? Xianyu quickly replied. Moon Empress, I don't even have a disciple. How would I know what to give to my disciple? When the Moon Empress heard Xianyu's words, the smile on her face became even brighter. I know you don't have a disciple. Even if you have a disciple, you won't be able to find one as good as this Empress disciple. Lin Yuan hung up the phone and looked at Wenyu, who was looking at him with anticipation. Uncle Xian praised you just now, saying that you are very reliable. A bright smile immediately appeared on Wen Yu's face. Wen Yu had always respected Lady Xian Yu, so she was pleasantly surprised to receive Lady Xian Yu's affirmation. Lin Yuan asked as he looked at the list in her hand. What are you going to do? Wen Yu waved the list in her hand and said, Young Master Lin Yuan, the mansion doesn't have any furniture yet, so I would like to customize some. Wen Yu's words reminded him. He had placed plenty of furniture and wood in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Due to the high concentration of spirit qi in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, the furniture and wood had already turned jade-like. In fact, before Lin Yuan and Ling Xiao had arrived at the royal capital, the furniture and wood had already undergone a certain jade-textured transformation. In the past few months he had been enhancing phase and increasing his strength, so he had long forgotten about these jade-textured furniture and wood. He did not know to what extent these furniture and wood had become jade-textured. If not for Wen Yu's reminder, he would not have remembered. Then Lin Yuan waved his hand and took out some furniture from the Spirit Lock spatial zone. When Lin Yuan took out these jade-textured wood, Lu Jia, who was looking at the mansion's scenery, almost bit his tongue. After carefully looking at these jade-textured furniture that Lin Yuan had just taken out, Lu Jia choked and burped. Lu Jia really wanted to sigh with emotion. What kind of master did I follow? 166 Reading Network. Chapter 178. 2 years ago, as the Radiance 100 sequence number 39, Lu Jia was considered quite wealthy. He had accumulated a few million Radiance dollars by participating in competitions and completing missions for a year. However, most of these Radiance dollars were used by Lu Jia to increase the Insect Queen's level or enhance its quality. The resources that Spirit Qi professionals needed to consume to nurture phase were a bottomless pit. The stronger the expert, the more resources they needed to consume. However, Lu Jia felt that his worldview had been overturned when he looked at the furniture that Lin Yuan had taken out with a wave of his hand. Jade-textured furniture had always been a luxury in the Radiance Federation. After the Spirit Qi awakening, jade was divided into two types. One was hard jade formed by ores, and the other was nephrite formed by jade-textured wood. Hard jade formed by ores was expensive in the Radiance Federation and was considered a relatively rare spiritual material. Nephrite was many times more expensive than hard jade. Before the Spirit Qi awakening, there were many hard jade in the underground or veins. After the Spirit Qi awakening, hard jade absorbed the Spirit Qi in the world and had different functions. Nephrite did not exist at all before the Spirit Qi awakening. Nephrite could only form a thin layer of nephrite shell on the surface of wood in an environment with an extremely strong Spirit Qi concentration. It was already very rare for the wood to form a layer of nephrite shell on the outside. The furniture that Lin Yuan had taken out with a wave of his hand was not just the surface of the wood, but it had completely become jade-textured from the inside out. The furniture looked like it had the unique mellow and transparent feeling of nephrite. Under the sunlight, it was as if it could filter the sunlight and disperse it, turning it into a colorful ripple-shaped halo. These colorful ripples reflected on people's bodies, as if they were immersed in a kind of tranquil and gentle feeling. This time Lin Yuan took out a lot of furniture with a wave of his hand. Lu Jia did not dare to say about these jade-textured furniture in other places, but no one would be willing to auction them in the Star Web's treasure pavilion. Although these jade-textured furniture did not have any special functions, they were luxuries that were crazily sought after in the Radiance Federation. Lu Jia had been lamenting Wen Yu's extravagance before. Now that he saw Lin Yuan casually take out the jade-textured furniture, he understood. Compared to the jade-textured furniture, the money spent on leveling the land and building the manor was nothing. He did not expect that these ordinary furniture would actually become like this after being placed in the Spirit Lock spatial zone for a period of time. Although Lin Yuan was not as surprised as Lu Jia, he still felt a little surprised when he touched the jade-textured furniture. However, when Yu was used to it, she didn't think much of it. In her opinion, as the young lord of the Radiant Moon Palace, it was reasonable for him to have these things. Lin Yuan and Lu Jia carried these jade-textured furniture into the mansion. When Lin Yuan took out the jade-textured furniture from the Spirit Lock spatial zone and placed it in the mansion, it immediately made the antique mansion look different. Sunlight streamed in through the window and shone on the jade-textured furniture. These jade-textured furniture created ripples of light and shadow, as if one was immersed in water. At night, as long as a single lamp was lit in the house, it would not be able to be used. The jade-textured furniture would scatter the lamp's halo, and the mansion would immediately have a feeling of burning the lamp to prolong the day. Lin Yuan looked at the mansion and a sunny smile appeared on his face, revealing his small white teeth. It was full of youthful vigor. This would be his home in the future. When Zhou Xian came to the royal capital, she would not have to live on campus and could return to his home every day. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly saw Wen Yu holding the table with her hands as if she was a little dizzy. He hurriedly asked, "Wen Yu, what's wrong with you?" In the past few days, Lin Yuan had been enhancing the acid corrosion queen bee and chimey in the royal capital's Creation Master Association's breeding room and forgetting to eat and sleep. It was the same for Wen Yu. During these 2 months, Wen Yu had been supervising the work. Even if the Class 4 Spirit Craftsman team worked overtime to build the manor day and night, they had split into 2 groups. One group during the day and the other at night. Each group would be busy for 12 hours and still have half a day to rest. However, Wen Yu was different. In order to better supervise the work, she almost did not sleep. Unless she was tired, she would lean against the wall and take a nap, forcing herself to hold on until the Class 4 Spirit Craftsman finished building the manor. Even after the manor was built, Wen Yu did not have time to rest properly. Instead, she first found a cleaning team to clean the inside and outside of the manor. Now Wen Yu really could not hold on anymore. Even if Wen Yu had consumed the drop of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar that Lin Yuan had given her, her physique was already very healthy. However, in such a situation she was actually suffering from hypoglycemia. "Young master, I'm just a little dizzy. I'll cook for you and big brother Lu in a while and I'll be fine after resting for a while." Lin Yuan said, "Sit here and rest for a while. Take a seat and rest for a while. We'll order lunch outside." Lu Jie said, "Sit here and rest for a while. I'm familiar with the takeaways around here. I'll order now." After saying that, Lu Jie took out his cell phone and prepared to order food. Lin Yuan took an incense burner carved with all kinds of auspicious vase from the shelf at the side. Then he used his spiritual energy to search in the spirit lock spatial zone for a moment and took out a black crystal-like sacred linden. This sacred linden was very small, about 10 centimeters long and 2 fingers thick. This sacred linden was agarwood. However, this ordinary agarwood had been placed in Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone for a long time, and it was completely jade textured, just like the previous wooden furniture. Lin Yuan used his hand to gently break this jade-textured agarwood that was already like a black crystal. Gotcha! A crisp sound rang out and the agarwood immediately broke. Lin Yuan took out a small section and placed it in this incense burner. Then he summoned Chimey, which quickly understood Lin Yuan's intention and used scattered light on this jade-textured agarwood. A fine ray of light fell on the jade-textured agarwood and directly ignited it. The ignited agarwood emitted a very soothing fragrance. Before Lin Yuan's body had recovered, he was always prone to dizziness, so he prepared a lot of agarwood. Ordinary agarwood was still considered common, and Lin Yuan had stored a lot of it previously. Later on, he had thrown it into the spirit lock spatial zone when he no longer needed it. The burning agarwood's fragrance could calm the mind very well. Over time, Lin Yuan also liked this agarwood's fragrance. Although the agarwood's fragrance was faint, the essence of the fragrance was pure. The agarwood was like a solid stone. If the heart could be like this agarwood. No matter how chaotic the outside world was, what was there to be afraid of? When Wen Yu saw that Lin Yuan had ignited this jade-textured agarwood for her, she hurriedly said, "Young master, this jade-textured agarwood is precious. Young master, this jade-textured agarwood is precious. I'll go rest for a while." Lin Yuan looked at her and shook his head. "After eating, go and have a good rest. It's been hard on you during this period." Lin Yuan had a lot of jade-textured agarwood in the spirit lock spatial zone. If Lin Yuan had been very short of money in the past, he would definitely sell this jade-textured furniture and agarwood in exchange for resources to improve his and Chu Si's strength. However, Lin Yuan was no longer short of resources. Therefore, whether it was this rare jade-textured furniture or the jade-textured agarwood, they were just decorative daily necessities. When he needed to use it, he would naturally use it. After Lin Yuan summoned Chimey, it immediately chirped and flew from the first floor to the third floor of the mansion. After circling twice, it stood on the shelf proudly and chirped for a while. Then it landed on Lin Yuan's ear and intimately bit the stray hair on his forehead. Lin Yuan looked at Chimey and could not help but smile dotingly. What a little troublemaker. 166 Reading Network. Chapter 179. Lu Jie's heart was beating wildly when Lin Yuan broke the jade-textured agarwood. If someone else had this jade-textured agarwood, they would probably wear this priceless jade-textured agarwood in their hands. They would definitely carefully collect it and pass it down as a family heirloom. However, Lin Yuan actually broke it in his hands and used it just like that. After experiencing the previous few surprises, Lu Jie had unknowingly gotten used to it. Compared to Lin Yuan's casual use of this jade-textured agarwood, Lu Jie was more concerned about the delicate azure blue bird standing on Lin Yuan's ear and acting coquettishly. As a spirit chi professional who comprehended willpower runes, he could clearly distinguish whether a fae was a fantasy breed or not compared to ordinary spirit chi professionals. This was because fantasy breed faes had the smell of willpower runes. To put it bluntly, fantasy breed faes carried the world's will. Therefore, when Lin Yuan summoned Chimey, Lu Jie had already seen that this delicate azure blue bird with cloud patterns and stars on its body was a fantasy breed fae. At that moment, Lu Jie only felt that Lin Yuan was like a cloud of fog that he could never see clearly. When he first met Lin Yuan and became his retainer, Lu Jie only knew that Lin Yuan could heal the insect queen and was a class 2 creation master. However, after coming into contact with Lin Yuan again, Lu Jie's understanding was refreshed everywhere. In particular, this silver/fantasy breed avian fae in front of him. However, Lu Jie did not think so much as he had long positioned himself as the strongest shield in front of Lin Yuan. The higher Lin Yuan's talent and strength were, the more Lu Jie would be spurred on. It would let Lu Jie know that he needed to work hard to improve his strength. Otherwise, he might not even have the qualifications to become a shield in a moment's time. When you looked through the white smoke rising from the burning agarwood in the incense burner and looked at the youth in front of her, who was playing with the azure blue bird on his ear, there were indescribable feelings in her heart. However, after these 2 months of hard work, when you was not only grateful to this youth in front of her, she had also opened a new life in this youth's choice. What when you had to do was also to fight for this new life. At the same time, when you was also very grateful to her who was born with a heart like a flower and a tree. If it wasn't for that, how could she have been chosen by this cheerful young man? The agarwood in the incense burner burned in spirals, and the smell of the agarwood seemed to freeze time here. The quiet scene reflected the sparkling light reflected by the jade-textured furniture. It was an indescribable tranquility. However, this tranquil mood was disturbed by the food delivery. After eating lunch when you went to rest, Lu Jie planned to buy some daily necessities as well as some spiritual ingredients that were of a higher grade. As Lin Yuan's retainer knight, Lu Jie naturally had to live in this mansion with Lin Yuan. At the end of the day, this mansion was Lu Jie's home. Naturally, he couldn't order takeout for 3 meals a day at home, even though it was a little troublesome to cook for himself. However, the atmosphere of the mortal world could make the home more cozy. There were a lot of rooms in this 1,000 square meter mansion, and Lin Yuan still needed to carefully plan the layout of these rooms. Lin Yuan took out his cell phone and called Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian had not gone home during the holidays but had gone to participate in the Redbud 100 special training. Zhou Xian did not hide her talent, so when she returned to school, her fantasy breed obsidian iron wild bull caused a stir in the school during the combat class. In the end, Ling Xiao appointed Zhou Xian as a seeded contestant in the Redbud 100 sequence. Lin Yuan was not worried about Zhou Xian going out to train during the holidays, as Cold Moon had already gone to Redbud City. With Cold Moon around, Zhou Xian would naturally not be in any danger. The real danger was probably those who had bad ideas about Zhou Xi's talent. After hanging up the phone and knowing that Zhou Xian was fine, Lin Yuan flipped through his cell phone and suddenly found that Zhang Xiaobai had posted on his moments. There were very few people who had added him as a friend on his mobile phone. They were his master, the Moon Empress, his sister Zhou Xian, Cold Moon, Wenyu, Lu Jie, and the Extreme Club's Zhang Xiaobai and Xening. Including Lin Yuan, there were only 11 of them. However, Zhang Xiaobai was the only one who would usually post on his moments when he had nothing to do. When Lin Yuan opened his moments, he saw that Zhang Xiaobai had taken a photo with a water cup with bronze wolfberries running in it. There was a line of words below. Zhang Xiaobai, I have no choice but to raise leeches, so I soak wolfberries in a thermos cup. Lin Yuan thought for a moment and replied below. Lin Yuan, wolfberries can't stop leeches, so I have to add Angelica. Lin Yuan was about to put down his cell phone when he did not expect Zhang Xiaobai to reply in seconds. Zhang Xiaobai, Angelica can't stop Xen Ying's hammer, so I soak ginseng and deer antler in hot sauce. Lin Yuan looked at Zhang Xiaobai's reply and raised his eyebrows. At that moment Tan Ran replied below. Tan Ran, is Brother Xiaobai going to argue with Lin Yuan? Zhang Xiaobai, actually when I was about to say ginseng and deer antler are not full, so I have to add kidney and kidney treasure, Lin Yuan had already lost. Lu Pinru, you're just craving roasted kidney. Xening, Zhang Xiaobai, did you pour the wolfberries I made for you into the toilet and didn't flush them? Are you deliberately provoking me? Lin Yuan found that Zhang Xiaobai was quiet after Xening sent this message. Lin Yuan imagined that Zhang Xiaobai should be suffering from Xen Ying's iron fist of justice at this time. Lin Yuan let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that he had won the argument. After returning to his bedroom, Lin Yuan logged on to Star Web, which he had not seen for a long time. It had to be said that Lin Yuan had been on Star Web a little less during this period. During these 4 months, Lin Yuan had been busy improving his strength. Even when he was delivering the goods to Zhou Xian, he had also sent the goods for these 4 months to her in one go. When he logged on Star Web again, Lin Yuan found that there were actually tens of thousands of unread messages in his Star Web store. Among them, nearly 1,000 were merchants who wanted to buy a large number of fays from Lin Yuan's Star Web store. The reason for this was that the fays sold in Lin Yuan's store were all in high demand in the market. For such fays, whenever Lin Yuan put them up, they would be swept clean in a few minutes by the people squatting there. If they did not squat when Lin Yuan put up the new fays, they would not be able to buy any of the fays sold in Lin Yuan's store. Lin Yuan did not pay attention to these large number of requests for purchase. Since the fays sold in his store were in short supply, they would be swept clean every time he put them on the shelves. Lin Yuan naturally would not casually cooperate with others and distribute a large number of fays in his store. This would not help Lin Yuan's store's reputation at all. These thousands of messages were from some customers who wanted to purchase. Lin Yuan found that the remaining tens of thousands of messages were from a group under his store. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled. He did not remember joining any group. Why were there so many group messages? Lin Yuan clicked on it with doubts in his heart. However, when Lin Yuan clicked on it, he understood. Baidu read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 180. It turned out that this group was actually the fan group of his purchase with no loss store. Every time a buyer completed a transaction on the Star Web store, they would be able to evaluate the store. After the evaluation, they could choose whether to pay a certain price to enter this store's fan group. Generally, no one would enter such a store's fan group. After all, which customer would be willing to pay a certain price to enter this store's fan group after buying something? Apart from some large Class 4 and Class 5 stores overseen by creation masters, only they would have such an honor. In fact, joining such a Star Web store's fan group was essentially to better spend in the Star Web store or communicate with the store owner. Lin Yuan looked at the purchase with no loss store's fan group. At present, there were only 37 people in the purchase with no loss store's fan group. How did these 37 people crazily send tens of thousands of messages? Lin Yuan could not help but be speechless. In recent months, there had not been many new fays in Lin Yuan's store. Every time there were new fays, they would be divided up by a few people waiting in line. Therefore, there were not many real buyers every time Lin Yuan put up new fays. Now, Lin Yuan's purchase with no loss store had a little reputation on Star Web. However, Lin Yuan's small store's reputation was a little playful, and the buyers who knew of this purchase with no loss store joked. This purchase with no loss store was indeed a purchase with no loss store because you couldn't buy anything at all. Almost all the customers who had bought fays from Lin Yuan's store had joined the purchase with no loss store's fan group. In the beginning, the people who entered the group wanted to wait for Lin Yuan in the group. They wanted to see if they could get more goods from Lin Yuan after entering the group. As a result, not only did they not wait for Lin Yuan, the mysterious store owner, but they were also deceived by all kinds of fake news from the other group members. Every time someone shouted that the purchase with no loss store would have new goods, The other group members who wanted to buy the goods would immediately run over. In the end, they found that there was nothing. The most outrageous thing was that at the beginning, a few group members had an idea and set an alarm clock in the middle of the night. It usually took a lot of effort to get up, but when the alarm clock rang, they immediately became spirited. They were in high spirits and shouted in the Purchase with No Loss Store's fan group. The store has new goods. As a result, most of the fans were deceived to wait in Lin Yuan's store. But after an hour or 2 hours, no matter how hard he squatted, he couldn't find it. In the end, he naturally knew that he had been cheated. On the contrary, when it was time for the new items to be released, they were all very cunning. They would only show off to their fans after they had snatched the items. Slowly, the people in Lin Yuan's fan club had also developed a combative friendship. The number of people in Lin Yuan's fan club was growing very slowly. After all, there were only a few that could stand out from the dozens of hungry wolves in Lin Yuan's fan club and snatch a fei to enter the fan club. Lin Yuan realized that there were quite a number of acquaintances in this group chat. Braised Egghead, Zhou Xian, the violent-tempered woman, and the Buddha-tempered woman were all in this group chat. Furthermore, Sister Xin and Braised Egghead were the most active and had the potential to become the group's vice leaders. Stream in the cloud. Deep Mountain Elder Lin hasn't been on the Star Web recently. This store manager actually hasn't said a single word to his store's fan club. Violent-tempered woman. Perhaps the store manager is rather busy. Stream in the cloud. If Deep Mountain Elder Lin is busy, Big Sister Xin and I will help manage the fan club in the future. We can't let those who join the fan club later have a chance to be cheated. Violent-tempered woman. Let them stand at the entrance of the store in the middle of the night as punishment. Immediately after, the violent-tempered woman mentioned the Buddha-tempered woman. Buddha-tempered woman. Buddha said, "Why did you call me?" Violent-tempered woman. Buddha has been crying because of your words every day. Previously, you cheated me to release new items in the middle of the night and made me squat for 3 hours. Just you wait for the next half a year. Buddha-tempered woman. Buddha said to repay evil with good. Violent-tempered woman. That Buddha didn't say that everything has its consequences. Your retribution is me. Stream in the cloud. Don't you guys think that the Star Web recently reported that these geniuses are too talented? Zhou Xian. Redbud City's Redbud Intermediate Spirit Chi Academy produced a Spirit Chi professional with a bronze/fantasy defense type fei. I have never heard of a bronze/fantasy breed fei before. Looking at the Star Web's news, this genius young lady has become the benchmark for top geniuses and is called a rare genius in 4,000 years. Stream in the cloud. Do you guys know about Black, who has become very famous recently? The Star Web reported that Black has a silver/fantasy breed healing type fei that can regrow severed limbs. Violent-tempered woman. I don't think I've heard of any fantasy breed healing type fei in the entire Radiance Federation. Stream in the cloud. Including Black silver/fantasy breed fei, there should only be a dozen or so. However, I've never heard of a fantasy breed healing type fei that can regrow severed limbs. Violent-tempered woman. I heard that the King-class expert, the Sand King, posted on the Star Web that he hopes Black can help heal his son's severed left leg. He is willing to pay a platinum/flawless fei. Stream in the cloud. I heard that the Sand King deleted this post. I wonder if he found Black to help heal. Violent-tempered woman. I wonder if Black's healing type fei is as powerful as reported. Zhou Xian. Everyone in Millstone Town said so it can't be wrong. Black is also a hero. You guys will know when you read more of Black's posts. Stream in the cloud. I don't dare to read Black's posts. I heard that you have to be especially careful of an administrator called Zhou in Black's posts. If anyone dares to say that Black is bad, if his hand speed isn't as fast as the divine travel Black Swallow, he won't be able to protect his parents. Buddha-tempered woman. Is Big Sister Xin Black's fangirl? Violent-tempered woman. What kind of fangirl is Big Sister Xin? It's called anti-fangirl. Zhou Xian. Rain Lady has no melons. Lin Yuan knew that Chu Xi's talent would be immediately valued and she would become a household name. However, he didn't expect that almost everyone would know about her in these 2 months. Similarly, Lin Yuan didn't expect his identity as Black to be so famous now. As for the Sand King that the braised egghead and the violent-tempered woman mentioned, Lin Yuan simply couldn't figure it out and didn't know what was going on. In the future, Lin Yuan would use Black's identity to climb the Star Tower. Once he passed the ranking competition and reached the Celestial Stairway, he would naturally be exposed to the Radiance Federation's citizens. This was because every duel after reaching the Celestial Stairway would be recorded by Star Web and stored in the Celestial Stairway video library. Every Star Web user could pay a certain price to watch these recorded duels. Star Web would take a portion of the income from these viewings, and the rest would be distributed to the victor of the duel in the video. Only the victor would be able to obtain the income from these duels. Every expert who climbed the Celestial Stairway on Star Web was equivalent to a celebrity. Right now, the feeling of being discussed behind one's back was truly wonderful. After observing for a while, Lin Yuan quietly went into hiding. After placing a new batch of elite spirit siphon goldfish and bronze usnias in his purchase with no loss store, Lin Yuan headed straight for Zhou Xian's store. This time Lin Yuan was going to buy a lot of goods from Zhou Xian's store. Just the large amount of inferior energy ores and low-grade energy ores that he had previously stored had already been used up. Baidu was going to read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 181. Originally, Lin Yuan didn't need to buy any more normal spirit siphon goldfish. He had originally planned to wait for the batch of 5 fortune ranches to evolve from normal to elite before he sold them. However, Lin Yuan didn't expect that the 5 fortune ranches that he had nurtured in the Spirit Lock spatial zone would evolve during the few months he had been in seclusion. After breaking through to the elite grade, they had made significant progress. Among them, many of the 5 fortune ranches that had broken through to the elite grade had already reached the standard of elite level 6 or 7. If these 5 fortune ranches were nurtured for a period of time, they would be able to take a half step into bronze. The 5 fortune ranches was a famous species of spirit siphon goldfish that implied auspiciousness, and an elite one could be sold for 60 to 70 radiance dollars. However, if they were promoted to bronze, the price of these elite 5 fortune ranches would instantly increase by over 100 times, reaching a high price of nearly 10,000 radiance dollars. The bronze 5 fortune ranches was actually no different from other bronze spirit siphon goldfish. However, the price was more than 30 times higher. This was because the 5 fortune ranches had 5 colors on its body, and its chubby fish body was charmingly naive, implying 5 fortunes and health. Just because of the auspiciousness and rarity of the 5 fortune ranches, it was enough for the 5 fortune ranches to be sought after. Lin Yuan planned to wait for these 5 fortune ranches to grow to bronze before selling them in his Star Web store. This way, his Star Web store's reputation would instantly soar. The reason why Lin Yuan was now preparing to operate his Star Web store was mainly because he needed to enhance the phase grades to increase the spiritual power in his body. During this period of time, although Lin Yuan could feel the growth of the spiritual power in his body, the increase was extremely slow. It was obvious that Lin Yuan still had a long way to go before he could become a B-rank spirit chi professional. During these 4 months, Lin Yuan had mainly enhanced the quality of his phase. Apart from Red Thorn, he had enhanced the quality of all his phase to legend. In terms of enhancing their grades, apart from the Jasmine Lily and Chimey from Bronze/Fantasy to Silver/Fantasy. Apart from the Acid Corrosion Queen Bee to Gold, Lin Yuan did not enhance the grades of the other phase. This was the reason why Lin Yuan's spiritual power growth was so slow during this period. Therefore, for the next period of time, Lin Yuan would climb the Star Tower while enhancing a large number of phase to increase the spiritual power in his body. He naturally wanted to sell these phase that he had enhanced in batches on Star Web. Not only did he have to separate his identity as a creation master and a combat class spirit chi professional. At the same time, he had to change his Star Web store. Lin Yuan would also sell the rare phase that he had enhanced. Of Lin Yuan would also purchase. As for those truly rare phase that they had enhanced, they would sell them and provide tailor-made phase. Lin Yuan would sell the truly rare phase that he have. Just by looking at the situation in the Purchase with No Loss Stores fan club, Lin Yuan knew that no matter how many new phase he put up, the number of fans would not increase much. In fact, it would be harder to enter the Purchase with No Loss Stores fan club in the future. If someone wanted to enter the fan club, they would first have to see if they could go to his Star Web store to sell new phase. If they wanted to go to his Star Web store to sell new phase, They would have to see if the hungry wolves in the fan club agreed to it. When he arrived at Zhou Xian's store, Lin Yuan realized that it was already twice as big as when he had first arrived. It seemed that Zhou Xian's store had been upgraded from Class 3 to Class 4 while he was in seclusion. When Lin Yuan saw Zhou Xian in the store, he noticed that she was gnashing her teeth and muttering, "Buddha-tempered, this nourishing old auntie. Her heart is simply black. This old auntie has bought everything this time. Damn it." Zhou Xian looked up and saw Lin Yuan. Zhou Xian immediately revealed a smile and hurriedly walked over. "Lin Yuan, I haven't been here for a while." 1 month ago, Zhou Xian's store had finally upgraded from Class 3 to Class 4 with the large number of bronze usnias and elite spirit siphon goldfish that Lin Yuan had provided. After the promotion from Class 3 to Class 4, the size of the store had more than doubled. This allowed Zhou Xian to make some adjustments to the store, and the phase and spiritual ingredients were more comprehensive. Zhou Xian's store had always had a good reputation, and after the promotion to Class 4, the accumulated reputation had exploded. This allowed Zhou Xian's store's business to be much better than before. However, Zhou Xian knew that the main reason was this youth in front of her. If it wasn't for the large number of bronze usnias and elite spirit siphon goldfish that Zhou Xian had provided, even if she worked hard for 10 years, she wouldn't be able to upgrade her store from Class 3 to Class 4. In fact, when Lin Yuan had delivered the goods to her, Zhou Xian had realized that the phase that Lin Yuan provided were different from the phase that Creation Masters sold outside. The phase that Lin Yuan provided might be of the same grade and quality as the phase that other Creation Masters sold, but they looked much inferior. Take the usnia as an example. Lin Yuan's usnia had thicker stems, fuller leaves and more juice. It was far better than the other bronze-level usnias that appeared in the market. It was as if there were two people, one strong and the other thin and weak. Zhou Xian's previous store didn't have any Creation Masters, so she knew that a 3-star store was the limit of her capabilities. Only by relying on a Creation Master would he be able to maintain the status of a Class 4 store after becoming a Class 4 store. This youth in front of him was already a Class 2 Creation Master at such a young age. It was enough to show that his talent was incredible and that his future was limitless. Moreover, when Zhou Xian saw Lin Yuan's store constantly selling new phase, she knew how terrifying the power behind him was. Many veteran Class 4 stores were now thinking of ways to contact the Purchase with No Loss store's owner for cooperation. This was enough to prove Lin Yuan's store's current influence. When Lin Yuan heard Zhou Xian's words, he replied with a bright smile. "Recently, I have been busy increasing the phase quality, so I haven't had the time to come over. Now that I have the time, I am here to look for Big Sister Xen to replenish my stock." When Zhou Xian saw the bright smile on Lin Yuan's face and how he upgraded his store to a Class 4 store, she firmed up her mind. Zhou Xian straightened her expression and said seriously, "Lin Yuan, what do you think of Big Sister Xian's store? Lin Yuan, what do you think of Big Sister Xian's store?" When Lin Yuan heard Zhou Xian's sudden question and her serious expression, he took a closer look at the well-organized store that was managed by Zhou Xian after her promotion to a Class 4 Creation Master. Right now, the store was obviously filled with more customers than when Lin Yuan had first arrived. Big Sister Xen has managed this store very well. I think that Big Sister Xian's business has been flourishing recently. In fact, when Zhou Xian asked about his store, Lin Yuan already had a vague idea of what she was going to say. Lin Yuan vaguely knew what Zhou Xian was going to say next. Baidu was going to read the latest chapter of the Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 182. Zhou Xian couldn't help but feel a little conflicted. When Zhou Xian had upgraded the store to Class 4, she had made up her mind. However, it was useless even if she made up her mind. Zhou Xian couldn't make the decision herself. This was because the decision lay in the opinion of the youth in front of him. Zhou Xian didn't say her opinion directly. Instead, she walked to the drawer of the counter and took out a document that she had drafted a long time ago. "Lin Yuan, take a look at this." Zhou Xian was a swift and decisive person, and she had always been decisive in doing things. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to upgrade the store to Class 3 without a Creation Master backing her. Previously, this Star Web Class 3 store was only one step away from Class 4. When Zhou Xian had the idea, she had drafted this document. However, during this month, Zhou Xian would take a look whenever she had the idea. Unknowingly, this document had been modified no less than 3 times when Zhou Xian had taken it out to take a look. Every revision made Zhou Xian's heart ache, but every time she revised it, Zhou Xian was very decisive. Lin Yuan looked at the document that Zhou Xian handed over and couldn't help but raise his brows. Lin Yuan sighed silently. It seems like I guessed correctly. However, the content of the document surprised Lin Yuan. Zhou Xian's document was actually a cooperation agreement, and the content was actually very simple. It was to maintain the current cooperation model, and Zhou Xian's store's profit would be 20%. It would be the remuneration for him to continue supplying goods to Zhou Xian's store. At the same time, Zhou Xian had also promised to give him 30% of the store's shares as a condition for him to increase the supply. This 30% of the shares, after deducting the 20% of the profits, was used as an additional dividend. If the store were to close down, Lin Yuan would also get 30% of the proceeds from the sale of the store. Of course, there was a precondition, and it was that Lin Yuan couldn't sell the 30% of the store's shares during normal business hours. After Lin Yuan carefully read through the cooperation agreement, he couldn't help but be even more shocked. This cooperation agreement was at least twice as good as the agreement between the chief creation master of those Class 5 stores. Most of the Class 5 stores would give a huge bonus to the creation master behind them, but very few stores would be willing to split the store's shares to the creation master. Lin Yuan had always known that Zhou Xian was a trustworthy person who insisted on the quality of spiritual ingredients. But now he didn't expect Zhou Xian to be so bold. Lin Yuan pondered the feasibility of this cooperation agreement. Lin Yuan wasn't pretentious about Zhou Xian's generous conditions. After all, Lin Yuan had been supporting the Fei store by himself since he was 8 years old. He had been doing business and was originally a businessman. A large part of the reason why Lin Yuan had supplied Zhou Xian with the goods was that she had taken the risk of dying a severely injured Fei to help him keep the goods. Otherwise, Feis like the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus and Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia would have missed him. In fact, even with Lin Yuan's current wealth, he might still be able to purchase the Cinnabar Sweet Osmanthus, but he could forget about the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia. The Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia was on the same level as the Silver Stamen Gold Luster Cassia. The Silver Stamen Gold Luster Cassia could cleanse the body of impurities, while the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia could increase spiritual energy. Although the Cinnabar Osmanthus Haworthia wasn't like the Silver Stamen Gold Luster Cassia nectar, where there were only 2 of them in the world, there wouldn't be many of them either. Previously, Lin Yuan had felt Zhou Xian's efforts to rope him in. Therefore, Lin Yuan had been willing to supply Zhou Xian's store. Otherwise, if Lin Yuan really wanted to sell Feis, he would just put them up on his purchase with no loss store. No matter how many he put up, they would all be sold in just a few minutes. Lin Yuan's goods were just a drop in the ocean compared to the Radiance Federation's market demand, and the goods were in short supply. However, Lin Yuan had to admit that Zhou Xian's cooperation agreement's conditions were something that a businessman like Lin Yuan couldn't reject from a business perspective. Zhou Xian's store was now a Class 4 store. Lin Yuan might not be able to sell the shares that Zhou Xian promised, but just 30% of the shares was a significant amount of dividends. Furthermore, there was an additional 20% of the profits from providing the goods. After calculating, Lin Yuan just had to increase the quantity of goods for Zhou Xian, and he would be able to obtain 41% of Zhou Xian's net profit. Such a profit was definitely huge. Furthermore, the goods that Lin Yuan provided weren't free, and Zhou Xian still had to purchase them at the price that he had previously given. When Zhou Xian saw that Lin Yuan had been looking at the paper agreement, she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Zhou Xian was truly afraid of being rejected by Lin Yuan. However, if Zhou Xian were to increase the tier or give Lin Yuan more shares of the store, Zhou Xian simply couldn't do it. Zhou Xian would give Lin Yuan 41% of the store's net profit, and she still had to spend extra money to purchase more goods. In fact, Zhou Xian's earnings weren't even as much as when she had opened the Class 3 store. The Class 4 store was twice the size of the Class 3 store, and Zhou Xian would need to hire 2 additional employees. In addition to the maintenance fees for opening a Class 4 store on the Star Web, Zhou Xian didn't have much money left. From a businessman's point of view, Zhou Xian's method wasn't wise. However, Zhou Xian wasn't just a businessman. At the same time, she was a person with dreams. 5 years ago, Zhou Xian had single-handedly developed a Class 1 store to the current Class 4 store. Zhou Xian knew that if she didn't have a deep collaboration with Lin Yuan, if Lin Yuan suddenly stopped supplying goods to her store one day in the future, then her Class 4 store would instantly lose its most important core selling point. The store's accumulated reputation would also plummet. In fact, during this period of time when Lin Yuan was supplying goods, Zhou Xian had experienced a kind of joy that she had never experienced when managing a store. In the past, she had been thinking of ways to make customers spend more money to purchase spiritual ingredients and phase in her store. But now, the customers that came to the store were all saying good things and wanting to purchase Lin Yuan's bronze usnias and elite spirit siphon goldfish. This feeling was simply too great. To Zhou Xian, who wholeheartedly devoted herself to the store, this feeling of being begged to sell goods was simply the peak of life and endless enjoyment. If Zhou Xian had to use a sentence to describe this feeling, she would probably jump up and shout, "So high! I feel like I have reached the peak of life." The experiences over the past few months had caused Zhou Xian's outlook to change. The broadening of her outlook had caused Zhou Xian's philosophy of managing the store to not change, but it had given birth to something called ambition. Zhou Xian wanted to upgrade the Star Web store to Class 5 while she was still alive. Ever since Zhou Xian had this thought, it had become increasingly intense. In the end, it was simply out of control. Baidu was the first to read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 183. However, Zhou Xian also understood that if she wanted to upgrade the store to level 5, she could only rely on this young man. Just when Zhou Xian felt that her heart was about to jump out and her throat was dry from nervousness, Zhou Xian saw the young man in front of her raise his head and smile brightly, revealing his white teeth. "Sister Zhou's conditions are very good. I agree with the contents of this cooperation agreement. We can start working together." Lin Yuan's words and bright smile put Zhou Xian's heart at ease. At the same time, she felt ecstatic, because Zhou Xian knew that after this young man's promise, even if he didn't know if his shop could be promoted to level 5, he would definitely be able to keep it as a level 4 shop. "Lin Yuan, you are now the owner of this store. I will show you the details of the store's profits during this period." Lin Yuan waved his hand and said, "Don't worry. I will only supply Sister Xian's store according to the contract, but I will not participate in the management of the store." Lin Yuan's words calmed Zhou Xian's heart. Zhou Xian was really afraid that Lin Yuan would make all sorts of changes to the management of the store after taking over. Lin Yuan's reason for refusing was also very simple. First, he did not have time to help Zhou Xian manage the shop. Secondly, Zhou Xian had done a good job in managing her shop, and he didn't have any complaints. Thirdly, a store was actually the same as a combat class Spirit Chi professional squad. Although everyone could voice their opinions as a member of the team could only have one backbone, one main voice. Especially in battle. Otherwise, the two sounds might have turned one force into two, even though they were both moving forward. However, while these two forces were pulling each other forward, they were also restraining each other. After Lin Yuan used his pen to sign the contract, he turned around and said, "That's right. This contract only needed to be verified in the Star Web's rules before it would officially take effect." Zhou Xian's worries were finally resolved today. At that moment, Zhou Xian saw Lin Yuan's slender fingers placing the pen and paper documents on the counter. "Sister Xian, since I have become one of the owners of this shop, I have to contribute to this shop. After a period of time, I might not be able to supply bronze usnias anymore. The supply of bronze usnias will be changed to silver usnias." Lin Yuan's words made Zhou Xian overjoyed. If Lin Yuan could provide silver usnias, then his store would be able to rely on the silver usnias to become a Class 5 store, and it could be considered a sure thing. Lin Yuan had simply given him a huge surprise. Zhou Xian could imagine how crazily the customers in her shop would hope to buy the silver tier usnias in the future. Zhou Xian even made a plan in her heart. In the future, only those who spent a certain amount of money in the store would be qualified to buy silver usnias. The phase and spiritual ingredients sold in Zhou Xian's store were all excellent basic spiritual ingredients. These basic spiritual ingredients were actually available in most Star Web stores. Zhou Xian had never had any main competitiveness. Previously, Zhou Xian had only relied on the quality of spiritual materials. But with the silver usnias, Zhou Xian could use the silver usnias as the center to drive the sales of the entire store's basic spirit materials. Zhou Xian couldn't help but feel that roping in Lin Yuan was the most important and correct decision she had made in the few years she had opened the store. In the past, Zhou Xian had always felt that the highest state of being a bootlicker was to be able to bootlick without leaving a trace and without a trace. But now Zhou Xian had changed her original opinion. The highest state of being a bootlicker should be to be able to bootlick without a trace. While bootlickering others, one would also be able to obtain a large group of bootlickers. After notarizing the contract with Zhou Xian on the star web, Lin Yuan had done so. He had bought plenty of low-grade energy ores and normal spirit siphon goldfish in Zhou Xian's store. It was considered a rewarding trip. Lin Yuan might be the owner of this store now, but his business with Zhou Xian was business. It was just like how Zhou Xian had to spend money to purchase phase. Lin Yuan would also need to spend money to purchase spiritual ingredients and phase in the store. However, if Lin Yuan spent money in Zhou Xian's store, he would be able to obtain 42% of the net profit. To Lin Yuan, who was a huge consumer of energy ores, it was enough to save a considerable amount of radiance dollars over time. After selling the goods, Lin Yuan left the star web. Lin Yuan's address had been changed from the Fei store in Redbud City's Xia region to the manor in the outskirts of the royal capital. Lin Yuan found that Ostrich Logistics delivery was exceptionally fast this time. It took less than an hour. It seemed that Zhou Xian was also in the vicinity of the kingdom in reality. Ostrich Logistics was a very powerful organization in the Radiance Federation. Even if he rode the Platinum Divine Travel Black Swallow, it would still take him 3 to 4 days to travel from the royal capital to Redbud City. However, Ostrich Logistics couriers could deliver within 3 hours no matter where they were. This was because Ostrich Logistics had nurtured a unique spatial type Fae. It was a spatial Fae that could perform long-distance teleportation. This was also the fundamental reason why Ostrich Logistics was able to dominate the logistics industry. Lin Yuan saw On Neng carrying over a dozen bronze Fae storage boxes. In the few months since On Neng had become his exclusive courier, he could feel that she had also slowly become more experienced from the initial immaturity. However, what didn't change was On Neng's carelessness and extreme optimism. When On Neng saw Lin Yuan, she quickly waved her hand and said, "Don't worry. Mr. Lin, I came quickly this time, right? Since Mr. Lin has changed the address, On Neng doesn't have to be so dizzy every time she is teleported." When On Neng saw Lin Yuan waving his hand, she seemed to have forgotten that she was carrying these bronze Fae storage boxes. As a result, these bronze Fae storage boxes fell to the ground. On Neng was a little embarrassed as she touched her short purplish-red hair and started to tidy up the scattered bronze Fae storage boxes. Lin Yuan had purchased a lot of low-grade energy ores this time, so he wouldn't be able to store them without these bronze Fae storage boxes. Lin Yuan walked forward and helped On Neng tidy them up. After organizing the bronze Fae storage boxes, On Neng flicked her hair and revealed 2 small canine teeth as she spoke with a pitiful tone. "Mr. Lin, the new courier number 3451 On Neng, might not be able to deliver for a period of time." When Lin Yuan heard On Neng's words, he looked at her and waited for her to continue. On Neng blinked her eyes with some reluctance before revealing an extremely optimistic smile. On Neng is a member of the Ostrich Guild Club's S Tournament Reserve team. The S Tournament will start in 2 months, so On Neng has to return to the team for special training. However, after the S Tournament, number 3451 On Neng will still be your exclusive courier. In the past few months, On Neng would be the one delivering and receiving the goods for Lin Yuan's store. During these few months, Lin Yuan and On Neng had really become rather familiar people. When Lin Yuan found out that On Neng had the gold armor-piercing insect and the silver scatter insect in the Xia region, he knew that On Neng's identity in the Ostrich Logistics was not simple. He didn't expect On Neng to be a newcomer that Ostrich Logistics strongly promoted. She was also a member of the reserve team of the Ostrich Guild Club's S Tournament team. The Ostrich Guild Club was different from the Extreme Guild Club that Zhang Xiaobai and Exen Ying were in. The Extreme Guild Club was only a B-class guild club, but the Ostrich Guild Club was ranked in the top 16 of all the guild clubs in the Radiance Federation. On Neng, you have to do your best in the S Tournament. When you come back you will no longer be Anning but Senior Anning. Anning has been doing very well during this period of time. Anning rarely received praise, and now that she heard Lin Yuan's praise, she was immediately overjoyed. She revealed her small tiger teeth and looked especially adorable. Then Mr. Lin will wait for Senior Anning to be your exclusive courier after the S tournament. During the S tournament, I will use a bullet rain to extinguish the opponent's pain. While speaking, Anning even clenched her small fists as though she was proving to Lin Yuan and encouraging herself. After Anning left, Lin Yuan stored all the bronze face storage boxes that were filled with low-grade energy ores into the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Now that Lin Yuan had received the low-grade energy ores and normal Spirit Siphon goldfish, he returned to his room and changed to a new Star Web card before logging onto the Star Web. After logging onto the Star Web, Lin Yuan asked Genius to use its exclusive skill to transform into a mask and put it on his face. After logging onto the Star Web, Lin Yuan asked Genius to use its exclusive skill to transform into a mask and put it on his face. This time, Lin Yuan didn't log onto the Star Web as a purchase with no loss store owner or a Class 2 creation master. Instead, he logged onto the Star Web as the Combat Spirit Chi Professional Black. Lin Yuan's main objective this time was to climb the tower and reach the Celestial Stairway. During the process of climbing the tower, he would be able to feel his current strength and sharpen his combat tacit understanding with his newly improved comrades. Baidu went to read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 184. Lin Yuan had separated his identity as a creation master and a combat class Spirit Chi professional in the Guild Alliance. They were placed on 2 Star Web cards. Black's identity as a healing-type Spirit Chi professional was naturally bound to his previous Star Web tower climbing record and the number of floors he had climbed. When he had climbed the Star Tower previously, he had stopped after fighting with a combat-class Spirit Chi professional who had 3 bronze snake species phase. At that time his strongest combat power was only bronze Chimey. If it wasn't for that combat-class Spirit Chi professional who had 3 bronze snake species phase and had disclosed his phase information in the phase information, he wouldn't have been able to do so. If Lin Yuan fought, he would not be able to seize the initiative. Then he instructed Chimey to use tactics and the exclusive skill Clear Sky to clinch victory. In fact, the reason why the combat-type Spirit Chi professional with 3 snake species phase had revealed his phase information was because he had been searching for them. To put it bluntly, it was just to act cool. At that time, Lin Yuan still remembered that the combat class Spirit Chi professional with 3 bronze snake species phase had climbed to the 37th floor. At that time Lin Yuan had only been on the 22nd floor, so this would undoubtedly give people a sense of superiority that they wanted to show off. Every 10 floors of the Star Tower was a threshold. Therefore, the combat class Spirit Chi professional who had climbed to the 37th floor with 3 bronze snake species phase naturally did not think much of Lin Yuan, who had only climbed to the 22nd floor. However, in his opinion, exposing his trump card in front of others was the stupidest choice. Compared to the combat class Spirit Chi professional who had 3 bronze snake species phase, Lin Xiao's current strength was comparable to that of a combat class Spirit Chi professional. Now Lin Yuan's strength had undergone a tremendous transformation. Lin Yuan had never lost when climbing the tower before. Thus, until now Lin Yuan still had a 100% chance of winning the Star Tower duel. Lin Yuan opened his Star Tower duel character ID card. Name, Black Gender, Male Height, 178 cm Weight, 61 kg Star Tower Floors, 23 Spirit Chi Occupation, Healing Type Professional Occupation Level, C Contracted Fey, Morbius Bronze 10/Legend, 1000 Questions Beast Bronze Level 1, Legendary, Twilight Starbird Silver 1 Fantasy Eye, Red Thorn Bronze 5/Epic, Acid Corrosion Queen Bee Gold Level 1, Legendary, Record, 23 matches 23 wins, 0 losses, highest floor 23. Lin Yuan looked at his contracted phase information in the identity card and could not help but nod in satisfaction. Lin Yuan had a great sense of accomplishment because this was the improvement he had obtained through his own efforts in the past 4 months. Things were no longer the same as before. Lin Yuan's identity card only displayed the Star Web information that must be displayed in the Star Web duel. In other words, it was the name, battle record and Spirit Chi occupation. If Lin Yuan chose to reveal his contracted phase to the public, the Fey with the lowest quality was Red Thorn, but it was already at Bronze/Epic. As for the other Fays that he could upgrade, none of them were lower than Legend. There were even Silver Fantasy Breed Fays. It would probably blind the opponent's eyes and cause a sensation in the Radiance Federation. As for the Silver Eye/Fantasy Eye Jasmine Lily, the Bronze X/Legend Spirit Gather Goldfish, and the Bronze X/Legend Blue/Purple Butterfly, Morbius Exclusive Skill Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, Spirit Lock. These Fays belonged to Morbius Exclusive Skill, Spirit Lock Spatial Zone, Spirit Lock. Therefore, they were only included in Morbius information on the identity card and would not be displayed on Lin Yuan's identity card. After Lin Yuan checked his information, he took a deep breath and chose to be matched with an opponent on the Star Web. Soon Lin Yuan was matched with an opponent on the 24th floor of the Star Tower. Lin Yuan looked at the information on the other party's identity card. Name: Wang Shui. Spirit Qi. Occupation: Defense Type. Professional Record: 1,557 duels, 790 wins, 767 losses, highest floor 31. Lin Yuan secretly raised his brows. I'm matched with a Liver Emperor. I actually fought 1,557 duels. However, when Lin Yuan and this Wang Shui opponent saw each other, they were both stunned. Both of them were actually wearing imaginary silver masks. However, Lin Yuan's silver mask had a few faint patterns, while this Wang Shui's silver mask was bright and pure silver. After being stunned for a moment, Wang Shui suddenly asked, "Are you also a fan of Lord Black? Are you also Lord Black's fan?" Lin Yuan finally understood where that familiar feeling came from. This black attire and this silver mask really seemed to be the attire he had worn during the battle outside Millstone Town. Lin Yuan did not expect that his black identity would actually be so famous. After returning to the Star Tower to participate in the Star Tower duel after 4 months, he actually encountered a fan of his black identity in his first match. However, Wang Shui's question made Lin Yuan involuntarily ponder for a moment. I'm Black himself, so I should be considered Black's fan. Thus Lin Yuan nodded. However, Lin Yuan did not expect that the moment he nodded, this Wang Shui would suddenly roar and say, "Why does Lord Black have such an unprofessional fan like you? You're wearing a silver mask, but you're not even wearing black clothes." Lin Yuan could not help but scratch his head. He was wearing Spirit Qi clothes that clashed with dark blue and light blue colors today. Now, because of the color of his clothes, his black identity's fan was doubting him and saying that he was not a qualified fan. Now, because of the color of his clothes, he was being questioned by the fans of his identity as Black. He was not a qualified fan. This feeling was really strange to Lin Yuan. Before Lin Yuan could speak, Wang Shui suddenly let out a surprised exclamation. "What? Your name is Black? A healing type Spirit Qi professional?" Wang Shui's expression suddenly turned serious and looked at Lin Yuan with approval. "Although you didn't do a very good job with the details of your costume, your hardware is very professional. I admit that you're a professional fan of Black. I'll go easy on you later." After speaking, Wang Shui circulated his spiritual energy and summoned his 2 contracted Fays. The 2 Fays that Wang Shui had summoned were both Bronze Fays. One was elite while the other was normal. The Bronze/Elite Coiled Horn Goat and the Bronze/Normal Thickwool Goat were 2 very basic defense type Fays. Upon seeing Wang Shui summon his Fei, Lin Yuan also summoned Chimey. When Lin Yuan summoned Chimey, Chimey's eyes widened. Wang Shui, who was on the opposite side, shouted, "Misty, misty, misty grass." Baidu read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 185. Black had been Millstone Town's guardian during the Pinnacle Class 1 Alien Insect Dimensional Rift. It could be said that he had led the people of Millstone Town to resist the insect tide that descended from the Pinnacle Class 1 Alien Insect Dimensional Rift by himself during a time of crisis. This was a miracle in itself. It was even more shocking than when Lu Jie, sequence number 39 of the Radiance 100, had fought against the surging dimensional lifeforms for 30 minutes. He had fought for precious time for Cold Frost City, and this feat was even more shocking. Lu Jie was sequence number 39 of the Radiance 100 and was a household name in the Radiance Federation. It was precisely because of this that what Lu Jie had done could only be considered as icing on the cake. It was like a flower bed that was originally filled with all kinds of flowers. Even if you inserted a large number of peonies and made the garden bright and dazzling, it was still a flower bed. In the end, it was still a flower bed no matter how bright and dazzling it was. However, Black had stood up during the crisis as an ordinary person and was more like a hero that had risen from the ordinary people. Moreover, the silver/fantasy breed healing type Fae that Black had controlled could regrow a severed arm. But just this point alone was shocking to the ears. Even if Lin Yuan had left quietly and did not accept the reward or star web interview afterward. However, this gave Black's identity a layer of mystery. Lin Yuan might not have accepted the interview from Ascending Dragon City or Star Web. However, the spirit chi professionals who had fought alongside Lin Yuan in Millstone Town did not know Lin Yuan's true appearance and identity. They also had a rough idea of everything else. Just like the phase that Lin Yuan had used, be it Chimey, Blackie or Redthorn. Lin Yuan's Black's fan club and forum had a detailed explanation of his identity. There were even people who were good at drawing in Millstone Town that day who had drawn the images of the phase that Black had used. All the phase that Lin Yuan had called out, such as Chimey and Blackie, were circulating on Star Web. However, Lin Yuan's fantasy breed Jasmine Lily and Redthorn that had spread out a sea of flowers to resist the sea of insects were more eye-catching. Therefore, when Lin Yuan had summoned Chimey, Wang Shui had immediately realized it. There were so many people on Star Web and it was not strange to have the same name. Similarly, it was also possible for spirit chi professionals. Even if healing-type spirit chi professionals were rare, there would still be at least one out of hundreds of combat-class spirit chi professionals. They were both fans of Black and they were dressed similarly. It was understandable if they did it on purpose. However, no matter how fervent a fan was in this world where strength was respected, they wouldn't specially contract a fae that was very similar to their idol just to chase after their idol. Even if there were die-hard fans who wanted to do so, they would have to see if their affinity with faes was the same as their idols. During the battle in Millstone Town, he had summoned Chimey to investigate the dimensional rift situation. Therefore, many people who had fought in Millstone Town knew Chimey's appearance and name. As a fan of Black, Wang Shui could be considered one of the more fanatical ones. Otherwise, he would not have come to Star Web to climb the Star Tower and specially dressed like Black in the battle at Millstone Town. The azure blue bird that Lin Yuan had summoned was very similar to Black's rumored fae. It was rumored that Black's flying type fae was a blue bird that wasn't the size of a fist and had cloud patterns on its wings. Wang Shui looked at the azure blue bird fae that Lin Yuan had summoned and realized that it seemed to be more exquisite and handsome than the rumored Chimey. The cloud patterns on its wings seemed to be flickering with stars, which didn't match the rumors. However, the general color, size, and the cloud patterns on its wings were similar. With so many similarities, especially after seeing Lin Yuan's battle results, Wang Shui was very excited. Although he had only fought 23 duels, he had a 100% win rate. Wang Shui's eyes suddenly became fervent, and he was so excited that he was like a 300-pound child. Tell me quickly, is your blue bird called Chimey? When Lin Yuan heard this defense-type spirit chi professional immediately call out Chimey's name, he couldn't help but feel a little strange. Before Lin Yuan could speak, Chimey chirped twice and flew around to carefully observe Wang Shui. Its little head couldn't help but turn. Could this person be a fan of the sparrow-voiced lowly goddess? Although Lin Yuan wasn't sure how Wang Shui knew Chimey's name, it was obvious that his little fan had recognized him. Lin Yuan nodded helplessly. Chimey had already become a fantasy breed and evolved from a streamcloud azure bird to a twilight starbird. Although Chimey's appearance had changed a lot, it didn't change much overall. However, when Chimey used its exclusive skill Radiant Body, no one would be able to recognize it. Upon seeing Lin Yuan nod, Wang Shui immediately jumped 3 feet high. Wang Shui's sudden jump scared the 2 bronze/elite coiled horned goats and bronze/normal thickwool goats that were ready for battle. They fell to the ground in fear. The bronze/elite quality coiled horn goat and bronze/normal quality thickwool goat were so frightened that they lost all their fighting spirit and started bleeding at their contestants. Wang Shui didn't care about the 2 contracted fays that were startled by him. Instead, he shouted in pleasant surprise, "I actually saw a living Lord Black." Lin Yuan couldn't help but have a black question mark on his face. Could it be that you saw a dead one before? Then Lin Yuan heard Wang Shuai suddenly say, "Lord Black, people like you should be sold on the star web." Lin Yuan could not keep up with Wang Shuai's thoughts and could not help but ask, "Why? Could it be that these fans were crazy to the point of being twisted? Was this what they meant by destroying what they couldn't get?" Wang Shuai grinned and said foolishly, "Because Lord Black is a treasure." Lin Yuan only had one thought in his mind. What should I do if I'm being flirted with by my fanatical fans? I'm very anxious waiting online. Lin Yuan did not know what to say and did not reply to Wang Shuai. As a result, this made Wang Shuai worship him even more. Because in Wang Shuai's heart, the Almighty should be cold. At this time the tower climbing duel continued. The Star Tower's rules forbade both sides from voluntarily admitting defeat. The Star Tower would only determine that one party had lost the ability to fight if one party was dead or severely injured and could no longer fight. This rule of the Star Tower was mainly to nurture the courage and guts of the duelists in the Star Web battles. Death in the Star Tower had no effect on reality. Therefore they could let loose on the Star Web and hone their combat skills to their heart's content. Under normal circumstances, Lin Yuan would let Chimey release sound thrust to kill the opponent and advance to the next level. However, Lin Yuan could not bear to kill his fanatical fans with a single blow. Therefore he let Chimey release scattered light to attack the two bronze/elite coiled horn goats and bronze/normal thickwool goats. Under Chimey's control, scattered light could burn the bronze/elite coiled horn goats and bronze/normal thickwool goats into serious injuries. Then the Star Tower would determine his victory. However, he hadn't expected that after Chimey released the disorderly light, a silver-masked figure would pounce on the disorderly light. Just as the scattered light ignited Wang Shuai's black clothes, Wang Shuai lifted his hand and took off his mask before saying seriously, "Lord Black, I'm Wang Shuai. You're my hero and I want to walk the same path as you in the future." In the end, Wang Shuai yelled, "Lord Black, I'm Wang Shuai. You're my hero and I want to walk the same path as you in the future. I'm too lucky to die in Lord Black's hands on the Star Tower. Lord Black blasted me into fireworks." Before Wang Shuai could finish yelling, Chimey's scattered light engulfed Wang Shuai. Wang Shuai vanished under the burning of the scattered light, and even his ashes were smelted clean. After Wang Shuai was burned into nothingness, Lin Yuan won the Star Tower climb battle. In fact, Wang Shuai's words after taking off his mask had touched Lin Yuan's heart. Lin Yuan had been firm in his heart along the way to walk the path he wanted to take. However, Lin Yuan did not expect that the path he insisted on could affect others invisibly. Water was shaped by objects and people were determined by their hearts. In Lin Yuan's opinion, people had to have a passionate heart when they were alive. Otherwise, they would be no different from a walking corpse. Radiance emitted light spots from hearts filled with passionate hearts. Faint radiance light spots constantly danced and ignited other hearts filled with passionate hearts. These countless light spots emitted from hearts filled with passionate hearts fused together to form beliefs. Finally, the power contained in these beliefs was enough to light up the dome and bring down a miraculous radiance. At that moment, Lin Yuan's battle record was 24 duels, 24 wins, 0 losses. Highest floor, 24. After the battle, Lin Yuan could not help but ridicule in his heart. How was this blasted into fireworks? Shouldn't he be burned to ashes? Moreover, he had fought 1,557 duels at such a young age. Oh no, after losing this duel it should be 1,558 duels. How did Wang Shuai fight so many duels? Could Wang Shuai be an internet addict? Youngsters nowadays still had to protect their livers. Baiduan read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 186. Lin Yuan matched all the way on Star Web without stopping. He only stopped when the total number of matches reached 50. In the matches before the 50th floor, Chimey would only let out a clear cry and use sound thrust to easily end the battle. After dozens of matches, Lin Yuan realized that most of the bronze phase he was matched with were normal and elite. Lin Yuan had not encountered a single bronze/flawless phase in the first 50 floors. He had only encountered 8 silver phase in the first 50 floors. 5 of them were normal and 3 of them were elite. Lin Yuan felt that his concept of the Radiance Federation's Spirit Chi Professionals phase quality had changed a little compared to before. As Lin Yuan enhanced and upgraded bronze and silver phase quality, it was rather easy for him. Therefore Lin Yuan had unknowingly treated it as a very simple matter to upgrade bronze and silver phase quality. In fact, most of the Class 2 creation masters in the Radiance Federation could upgrade bronze phase quality to elite. However, it was very difficult to upgrade bronze phase quality to flawless. As for upgrading bronze phase quality from flawless to epic, it would require at least a Class 4 creation master. For ordinary creation masters, the higher the grade of the Fae, the easier it would be to upgrade the phase quality. Ordinary creation masters would use various spiritual ingredients to concoct spirit liquids with medicinal properties to stimulate the phase potential. The higher the phase grade, the stronger the body's potential and the easier it would be to stimulate it. However, Lin Yuan's method of enhancing phase was to instill a large amount of pure spirit qi into the phase body to optimize the phase genetic model and enhance the low-grade phase constitution. Therefore, for the Radiance Federation's other creation masters, it would be easier to upgrade the phase quality. However, Lin Yuan was the opposite. The lower the phase grade, the easier it would be for him to upgrade it. Due to this reason, Lin Yuan's thoughts had gradually changed. However, after climbing the Star Tower today, Lin Yuan had unknowingly returned his thoughts to the Radiance Federation's normal standard. Based on the combat class spirit qi professionals that he had queued up in the Star Tower, bronze and silver phase of normal and elite quality were the normal equipment for spirit qi professionals. Lin Yuan could not help but feel a little ashamed. Even though he had lived 2 lives, he could not help but make a common mistake. That was to always look at things subjectively with one's own eyes. If one's horizons were too high, it was inevitable that the things they saw would be biased. Lin Yuan could not help but nod in satisfaction as he looked at his 50 duels and 100% win rate. He then logged off the Star Web. However, Lin Yuan didn't know how much of a disturbance he had caused after climbing the Star Tower and engaging in a battle. First of all, Black's fan club and post forum had exploded. After Wang Shuai had met Lin Yuan on Star Web, he had downloaded the recording of his duel in the Star Tower. Then he posted it on Tieba in his fan group. Lin Yuan's Black's fan club and forum had a lot of people. However, apart from the people who had really fought alongside Lin Yuan in Millstone Town, these people had become fans. When those who had become Black's fans heard about Black's deeds and the silver fantasy breed Fae that was said to be able to regrow severed limbs, they felt that Black lacked a trace of reality while feeling admiration in their hearts. This was because Black had never shown up. This made these fans feel that they didn't have a backbone. However, it was different now. Black had really appeared on Star Web and even participated in the Star Tower climb. Wang Shuai had originally joined Black's official fan club, and the owner of this fan club was the healing-type spirit qi professional with the bronze-spitting turtle dove, Lu Lang. Lu Lang's Star Web name was Zuin, and many people called him Zuin Maniac. On Tieba and in the fan club, as long as Lu Lang found excessive criticism, he would use violence to curb violence. Wherever he went, as long as there was a keyboard, there would be no traces of people. After Wang Shuai posted the video, Lu Lang immediately recognized that Wang Shuai was fighting against Black. Lu Lang felt that Lin Yuan's aura during the battle in Millstone Town would always be deeply engraved in his mind. Wang Shuai's video made him quite famous in the fan club, so Lu Lang promoted Wang Shuai to the official fan club's administrator. Soon, the news of Black climbing the Star Tower spread from Wang Shuai's mouth through Tieba and the fan club. However, at the same time, there was a sudden change in the Star Tower's streak list. A name that had never appeared on the streak list before appeared at the top of the streak list. The first place on the streak list was Black. He had won 50 matches in a row and was 11 matches ahead of the second place. The streak list was just a small list that didn't receive much attention among the Star Tower's many lists. However, someone had appeared at the top and his name was very special. It was the young hero who had recently obtained a silver fantasy breed Fae in the Radiance Federation. At first, many people only thought that it was the same name, but after Black's Tieba and the fan club's Lu Lang verified it, Black's identity was immediately confirmed. Of course, there were doubts, but those doubters were concerned about their parents. Therefore, very few people dared to openly doubt Black's Tieba and the fan club. Otherwise, if they doubted it and Madman Zuin punched them, how could their parents survive? Soon Lin Yuan's Black's battle results were pulled out. A 100% win rate of 50 consecutive victories was astonishing, And the star web's matchmaking was absolutely fair. Within a night, Lin Yuan's black's identity received endless attention, but Lin Yuan, who had logged off the star web, didn't know anything. During these few days, apart from climbing the star tower, Lin Yuan had spent most of his time enhancing batches of usnias. Lin Yuan had enhanced these usnias, which couldn't even reach normal, to silver in the spirit lock spatial zone. He had also enhanced each pot of silver usnias to elite. Every time he enhanced a pot of usnias to silver, Lin Yuan could faintly feel the spirit qi in his body had a slight increase. However, these slight increases weren't obvious enough. Lin Yuan had been climbing the star tower every day when he had nothing to do. As of now, Lin Yuan had climbed to the 74th floor of the star tower. Lin Yuan didn't know if it was because of his good luck, but he only encountered a gold fei on the 74th floor. However, when Lin Yuan looked at this gold fei, he couldn't help but click his tongue. This gold fei seemed rather powerful. Baiduan read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 187. Lin Yuan had just been matched with an opponent on the 74th floor. He saw his opponent summon 2 tiger species feis. One was a gold fei based on its aura, while the other was a silver X fei that was about to break through to gold. Lin Yuan did not pay much attention to this silver X/elite steel-toothed tiger. However, the purple plasma condensed on the other gold tiger species phase surface was full of a destructive aura. Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check on this gold tiger species fei with plasma on its body surface. Fei name: Gold Lightning Tiger, Fei species, Toothed Cat/Tiger Fei grade, Gold 4/10. Fei type: Electric Fei quality. Flawless abilities: Frowny Face Claw Attack. Quickly pounce forward and use both claws to cause lacerating damage. Electric Arc Twining. Can condense electric arcs on a certain part of the body for defense or attack. Thunder Tooth Slash. Condenses electric arcs to form thunder teeth and causes high-pressure single-target damage. Electric Roar Magnetic Shock. Condenses a large amount of electric elements in the air through the tiger's roar and changes its own magnetic field to repel a large number of electric arcs in the surroundings, causing electric shock and tremor damage. Exclusive skill: Frowny Face Overloaded Electric Arc. Reaches an overloaded mode by condensing electric arcs. The violent overloaded electric arcs will cause a second explosion when coming into contact with bioelectricity. This gold tiger species fei made Lin Yuan frown secretly. The abilities comprehended by this gold tiger species fei were not considered strong. The Thunder Tooth Slash that it comprehended at gold was considered one of the weaker abilities that the gold lightning tiger could comprehend. The Thunder Tooth Slash was just a single target ability without any highlights. However, this gold lightning tiger's exclusive skill was simply too outstanding. The overloaded electric arc gave the mediocre Thunder Tooth Slash a second chance to cause damage. It even doubled the electric roar magnetic shock's damage. Lin Yuan also summoned Chimey and Red Thorn. After Chimey was summoned, it sensed the silver X/elite steel-toothed tiger and the gold 4/flawless gold lightning tiger opposite Lin Yuan, and a strong battle intent rose. In the past few days, Lin Yuan had been letting Chimey fight in the Star Tower battles. Although there wasn't any suspense in the previous duel, it also allowed Chimey to cultivate a fighting aura. As for Red Thorn, it was his first time summoning it in a Star Web duel. After Lin Yuan summoned Red Thorn, it stabbed its thick roots into the ground and extended its sharp vines to protect Lin Yuan's body. The vine that Red Thorn had evolved without any thorns was obediently and lovingly wrapped around Lin Yuan's wrist. After Lin Yuan's opponent summoned his fei, he muttered something to himself in the air. "Brothers, let me tell you something. I met another guy wearing a silver mask in this battle. In the past 2 months, including this one, he's the 10th person wearing a silver mask that I've killed." Lin Yuan raised his brows. This young man is quite arrogant. Lin Yuan already knew what the person he had been matched with was. This person should be a streamer. Lin Yuan had also encountered a fool who was talking to himself in midair on the 60th floor. At first, Lin Yuan had thought it was a mental patient. However, Lin Yuan found that the fool had been talking about the situation in front of him. He had clearly not fought, but he had already evaluated Chimey, which Lin Yuan had summoned. He was talking about all kinds of theories just like a great teacher. He was very much like an all-mouthy king who gave pointers. As a result, when they really fought, Chimey used its gold solar rays and scattered light, which was mixed with the scattered light's sound thrust and sent him to heaven. Later, when Lin Yuan talked about this at the dining table, Lu Jie explained it to him. Only then did Lin Yuan know that the person he had always thought was a mental patient was actually a star web streamer. The man in front of Lin Yuan was exactly the same as the fool on the 60th floor. Seemed like he was also a streamer. At that moment, Lin Yuan's opponent was leaning on the gold 4/flawless gold lightning tiger, making hearts in midair and blowing kisses. Lin Yuan could not help but feel a chill. The man opposite him was simply too feminine. This kind of femininity was different from the gentleness of a woman. It was a little like a chicken that had fallen into a noodle jar. When Lin Yuan heard Lu Jie mention it, he also knew that it was not easy to be a streamer for a star web duel. If one wanted to be a star web streamer, one had to first become a streamer. The star web duel streamer's review was very strict, unlike those singing and talent streamers who could live stream with a click. After the review, one's battle scene would be recorded from a third-person perspective and broadcasted in one's live streaming room. The audience in the live streaming room could send bullet comments and discuss the duel. However, the streamer in the duel could not see it. Only after the duel was over and they exited the star web duel and returned to the live streaming room could they see the bullet comments sent by the audience. Just like the feminine-looking man leaning on the gold lightning tiger. At that moment, the feminine-looking man suddenly stood up, looked at the air and frequently released electric sparks. He then started to dance and sing a rap. The feminine-looking man had already imagined the bullet comments in his live streaming room to be like, handsome, 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 and protect the best streamer. As the feminine-looking man thought about it, he smiled even more brilliantly and danced even more vigorously. The rap he sang also began to change from single to double. However, the feminine-looking man did not know that his live streaming room had exploded when Lin Yuan summoned Chimey. When Lin Yuan summoned Red Thorn, the bullet comments in the live streaming room completely blocked the feminine-looking man, who was singing and dancing. Lin Yuan felt that everything in front of him was simply blinding. In fact, when both sides summoned their phase, the duel had already begun. Lin Yuan's previous plan was not to use the Acid Corrosion Queen Bee and only use this gold 4/flawless gold lightning tiger to hone Chimey's combat skills. He wanted to see if Chimey could fight the gold 4/flawless gold lightning tiger with the strength of a silver eye/fantasy breed with Red Thorn's assistance. But now Lin Yuan looked at the feminine-looking man who had no fighting spirit and felt that it was obviously not a good opportunity to hone Chimey's combat skills. At that moment, the feminine-looking man had stopped singing and dancing, but he was still rapping. Yo, check it out. I finally fell from the 90th to the 74th floor. It was really not easy. Now I'll let you experience the journey of crushing noobs at light speed. Lin Yuan really could not listen anymore and said, Red Thorn, spread out the sea of flowers. Lin Yuan could not listen anymore and said, Red Thorn, spread out the sea of flowers. As soon as Lin Yuan's voice fell, Red Thorn's spore cavity shook. Red Thorn actually did not spray out many spores, but these spores still spread out a thin layer on the star web duel field. Then Red Thorn sprouted these spores into child ramets, and a large number of child ramets grew out, changing the duel environment. The vines in the sea of flowers were sharp, and the rose-shaped flowers on the digestive cavity bloomed abnormally gorgeous. The gold 4/flawless gold lightning tiger and the silver X/elite steel tooth tiger felt that this sea of flowers that suddenly appeared was very novel. They wantonly trampled on the newly grown Red Thorn's child ramets in the sea of flowers, obviously having fun. Lin Yuan looked at the feminine-looking man who was still talking nonsense in the air, and the two tiger species phase that had no fighting spirit at all. He could not help but shake his head. As a combat class spirit chi professional, even if he did not go all out, he should still face any duel seriously. However, this feminine man's mind had already been corrupted by something else. Since the other party had no intention to fight, Lin Yuan wanted to end this battle as soon as possible. Then he would be matched with an opponent to hone Chimey's combat skills. Lin Yuan said softly, Acid Corrosion Queen Bee, let's end the battle. At this time, the feminine-looking man was still speaking to the sky. The other side is quite considerate. They actually put on a show. Are they praising my beauty in this trashy sea of flowers? At that moment, The comments in the effeminate man's live-streaming room weren't as crazy as when Lin Yuan had summoned Red Thorn. Although there were still a lot of comments, it was less than before. At the very least, he could clearly see the fight between the feminine-looking man. Then the viewers from the livestream narrowed their eyes. This was because the heads of the two tiger species phase had been pierced by something, causing beautiful blood to blossom. Accompanied by two mournful tiger roars, these two handfuls of blood blossomed in this sea of flowers. This strange and beautiful scene caused the viewers in the effeminate man's live-streaming room to have goosebumps, and they could not help but curse. Baidu read the latest chapter of the Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.